Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the VCS Winter Split as we approach, well, the final day of the first half of the split, and we're going to be kicking off with 𝘀𝗶𝗏 taking on 𝘀𝗀𝗺. In the analyst desk alongside me is 𝘀𝗶𝗹𝗀 and 𝘀𝗏𝗺. Maybe I'll go to you first. 𝘀𝗀𝗺 undefeated so far. Surely this is the chance for them to be able to go undefeated throughout the entire first half or the first round robin.
Entire first half, absolutely. I think they should be reasonably comfortably above the likes of BTS. But last time they were 6-0, that's when things started to happen. And we might get a repeat. There's always the possibility for that repeat. I don't think it's particularly likely. I don't think they're going to just randomly sub out their bot lane this time. And we might see a pos substitution, but I don't think that's bad enough. And they saw pretty quickly that they can just put pun in and be fine. So it should be an undefeated first half.
And Rebel, I hear you giggling a bit. Is that because 𝘀𝗀𝗺 have been looking rather good in week 2, winning their 3 series, and maybe a chance for them to use that momentum to challenge 𝘀𝗀𝗺 in their final game of the first round robin as well?
Actually, I was giggling more about the reference that 𝘀𝗶𝗶 was making to the summer 2020 𝘀𝗀𝗺 who went 6-0 and then immediately went, what was it, like 1-5 on the back half of the split, or 3-5 on the back half of the split, ended up in a position where they were third and then they got knocked out of playoffs pretty much immediately, which was hilarious. We don't expect that of this 𝘀𝗀𝗺, hopefully. We say that hopefully, fingers crossed. Things go crazy tomorrow, but we're not going to talk about that because that's tomorrow's problem. And I do think BTS has stepped up their play. They're not quite to this level. When you think about how this split has been playing out, I think that BTS is trying to chase some of the top contenders, but right now it seems like 𝘀𝗀𝗺, 𝘀𝗀𝗺, and 𝘀𝗀𝗺 are currently just a level above everybody else, and that BTS is more so trying to break themselves off from the pack of what is Saigon and maybe even 𝘀𝗀𝗺C, who we see a little bit later on the day.
Yeah, as you mentioned, we will be seeing 𝘀𝗀𝗺C Esports taking on Team Flash. But for now, the focus is on the 𝘀𝗀𝗺 Burst the Sky series. To go back to you, 𝘀𝗀𝗺, what matchup do you think is going to be the most important? Because we talked about week 2 being week of the junglers, essentially. And this is Ego going against 𝘀𝗀𝗺. And especially when you look at Burst the Sky, 𝘀𝗀𝗺 and 𝘀𝗀𝗺 have been rather important to how the team performs.
Yeah, especially last week, we saw huge step-ups from the mid-jungle, and that's where we really want to see improvement coming from Burst the Sky, because those are like the star players, the faces. We have the new bot lane coming in, and 𝘀𝗀𝗻 has been performing very well, but looking towards that mid-jungle duo, up against Yado Ego, who are some of who are top 3 junglers, top 1 mid laner, in my opinion. At the moment, you're going to have to see them compare well so the rest of the map actually can really stand a chance and hopefully overcome that so the bot lane of 𝘀𝗀𝗻 and 𝘀𝗎𝟐 doesn't have to overperform against Artemis to necessarily win.
And Rebel, going back to you and talking about this 𝘀𝗀𝗺 win streak. I mean, every now and then we see big win streaks happening, no matter what sporting event it is. But at some point, that win streak comes to an end, and with the likes of 𝘀𝗀𝗺, do you see that happening against one of the top teams like 𝘀𝗀𝗺, 𝘀𝗀𝗻, one of the middle teams like BTS, Saigon Buffalo, or against, well, Team Secret, Team Flash?
I mean, 𝘀𝗀𝗺 started off in week 1 with 3 series wins, but they also went 6-3, right? They have lost games against Team Secret. They've lost games against 𝘀𝗀𝗻𝗄. They lost a game against Team Flash. This team is not just impervious to losses, right? There are chinks in the armor. The big thing is that they do look a lot more malleable when it comes to trying to improve over the course of a series. Whereas, previous iterations of 𝘀𝗀𝗺, when they started to get beaten, they really looked like they were just completely figured out, like they were solved and that there wasn't really as much of a problem. Especially, you want to talk about spring split, 𝘀𝗀𝗺 got figured out by Saigon. Saigon downloaded them in playoffs, and all of a sudden they were just the team had fallen to pieces. The fact that they ended up in 3rd place, a miracle of the fact that they were able to somehow make some resilient push in that best of 5 that ended up coming about, when in reality that should have been a quick 3-0 for them over the top of Secret when that happened. But nonetheless, this team looks like that is not as much of a problem, just because they do have far more angles to play from, Ego being at like MVP level, Yado playing at like the top level that we've expected him to. And so the 𝘀𝗀𝗺 squad, when it comes to being upset, I think there's really at least on this patch, there's very few teams that could possibly do it. I do think that we're well past that. I don't know that BTS has the bearings to be capable of doing so. Now, again, when we hit tomorrow, don't want to talk about it in depth, all of a sudden things go out the window and we start to get a testament to how much these teams are able to really adapt to a lot of massive change at once. And Cerberus, I think their biggest test is that week one, the performance a little bit later on Friday against SBTC. And that's going to be a big kind of understanding of how well they've been doing.
I do love the fact that we keep giving teasers as to what is to come tomorrow, because there's a lot of cool stuff, and on top of the fact that we've got 𝘀🐈 taking on 𝘀𝗀 and 𝘀𝘀cie taking on 𝘀𝗰𝗶𝗹𝘀, there's more stuff at 2 so do make sure you tune in tomorrow evening or morning, depending on what time zone you're watching from. 𝘁𝗶𝗹, going back to you, one thing I want to bring up for Cerberus is because you highlighted the mid jungle, but I want to direct our attention towards the ADC role, because so often we've seen teams coming close to maybe being able to take something from Cerberus, but every time it always feels the question is Artemis strong? Because if Artemis is strong, you don't beat Cerberus.
Yeah, so Artemis is far and away one of the most impressive and important AD carries in the split. His damage share is 32% for his team, which is nuts. And the next one is only at 26%, and that's Shogun on a pretty struggling by 𝘁𝗀𝗶𝗹𝗀 roster. So, but you see, Artemis, he's at the top of the list by a country mile. And you're looking across his roster and saying, where is it actually coming from? But I mean, yeah, it's coming from the jungle, spoiler, because Ego isn't playing damage champions, but he's removing the enemy jungler from the game rather than actually being a carry threat himself, which is an impressive style of play. It's really interesting to watch, but it shows up poorly in stats. And on the other side, you have 𝘀𝗀, who's back from a break, had a split or two off, and he's been performing very admirably. But you look across, he's been playing a lot more of the Jhin. He's been playing like a Phelios MF, these sort of things, and that sort of brings his damage share down compared to Artemis, who has completely forgone the Jhin, but he's played a hell of a lot of lethality Sire, for example. It's very. And the width of Artemis' champion pool means you can't ban him out. They're going to R5 the ADC, which feels weird, but they keep doing it. And it keeps working. And Artemis is just too good.
Yeah, Rebel, we've been speaking about how over the course of the split, it's essentially evolved into a Jhin misfortune meta, but from the very get-go, Artemis was having absolutely none of it. He's been playing his own champions, as 𝘁𝗶𝗹 mentioned, the Xayah, we've seen the Vayne, we've seen a few Caitlyn games as well. But I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the jungle now, because we've seen a lot of jungle bans coming through, at least in yesterday's series, and there's a lot of priority junglers that could be making its way into the draft. And speaking of the draft, we have just entered it, Rebel.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be shocking to see things. Ego, obviously, he plays things like the Nidalee. He likes to play a lot of these kind of more controlling early game. Like Lee Sin is another one that he is just an incredible player on. And if it's not banned out, then it's got to get picked up by the team. And on the other side, I mean, you're competing with Drakthar against him, where you start to dip into champions like Graves as an understanding. And especially since all 3 bans are seen here from the side of Cerberus, who, by the way, are starting Pos today. Pretty interesting stuff. But again, if you don't take that champion off, you're expecting almost certainly what is going to be Lee Sin versus Graves matchup if you're going to opt into something like that.
𝘁𝗶𝗹, that Lee Sin is picked up. We'll see whether the side of BTS do want to take the Graves as the answer. We're also seeing this Vex being banned away from Yado, one of the few players I feel in the VCS who's really able to utilize the champion.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been one of our better ones, but it's actually not the lock. It's actually the lock-in of the Graves themselves from Cerberus. It wasn't a locked-in Lee Sin. That's fine. That's really good. It gives you a lot of flexibility. Ego can almost certainly play it. I don't think he's played at the split, but he has in the past. Actually, he has played 1 game of it. But I think swinging it up onto the top side, you give Pos an actually really strong, safe laner that he can just sort of play off of. He doesn't need to have as great communication with the rest of his team. That helps with a little bit of a language barrier that will exist. I'm very interested to see how they round it out there. You've got the LeBlanc, so the Lissandra seems an obvious choice, and an interesting little just cycling random at the moment.
I mean, I want to touch on this Lissandra Rebel, because we saw it yesterday, I believe it was Froggy who played it, and Well, it wasn't the best of picks, but into the LeBlanc, a counter matchup, and you've got the 𝘁𝗀𝗀 as well for the side of Cerberus. There's a lot of pick potential for the team.
There's good AoE also between those two champions. They do have to use their bodies, unfortunately, which is one aspect, although there's nobody to really kind of contest against that here. Jhin doesn't do that particularly well. Yes, you get to dump a lot of damage in your first auto against somebody, but when you've got multiple members kind of being able to throw their bodies into the midst of a team fight, things get a little bit disastrous very quickly, and there's no kind of big disruptive mood that can kind of take that apart. There's no big AoE type CC that can generate some kind of difference against the Lissandra and the 𝘁𝗀𝗀. As for Lissandra into LeBlanc, I would go so far as to say I've seen enough of this matchup that I actually don't consider this a very hard counter anymore for the side of Lissandra. I feel as though LeBlanc now, when you talk about chain damage and where it's at, when you think about Aftershock and where that's at as a rune, when you think about where Lissandra is as a champion, it feels as though LeBlanc has most of the actual really good trading power within the laning phase if you're playing defensively to stop her. As the Lissandra, you want Electrocute, you want damage to begin with, and you want to be attacking the LeBlanc as much as possible and just ripping away wave control, because that's really the only way you're getting a massive advantage here as the likes of the Lissandra. Otherwise, you're sitting there passively, LeBlanc decides to hit you with a single chain, even if you have Aftershock, that's getting burnt once she uses her W, and then you're down that massive summoner or the keystone that comes out, and that means her trading potential after that just goes through the entire route.
Well, 𝘀𝗀 will have to play aggressive on the Lissandra, but 𝘁𝗶𝗶, we've got a Leona, we've got a 𝘁. Maybe we're going to be seeing a lot of action, a lot of engages in the bottom lane.
Yeah, and I'm very interested to see where Artemis is going to go. Hopefully he's looking for something with a bit of self-reliance, because you have a Lee Sin, you have a 𝘁, you have a LeBlanc, and your only support is the you don't have the most peel. Sure, Leona and Lissandra can absolutely provide it if they play that way, but at the moment, it's looking to be a little bit rough for Artemis, so he's going to take the Varus and just keep it at arm's length. Maybe just hurl those arrows in from afar. Seems interesting. Or Ziggs.
Or Ziggs. We'll have to see.
Same thing, different damage deck.
Artemis. Oh, pardon me, Artemis. Rebel, you're not Artemis. I believe this is the first time we're seeing Artemis playing Ziggs this split. It's not the usual kind of champion we would expect to see from a player of his caliber.
This composition as a whole actually is just a little bit absurd for Cerberus for me. You got Ego on something that doesn't do a bunch of damage in the very early stages of the game. You got a kind of decently set up team fighting composition, but again, Artemis isn't on some sort of backbone that you can really do a lot of damage with. I will say I actually like the Ziggs more than the Varus in this comp, just because you already have AP with the Lissandra, but she doesn't do that much damage, and so with Graves and with 𝘁𝗶𝗶, you have more than enough consistent DPS. You don't need like a marksman thrown into the mix, or in that case, an AP mage, so I'm more comfortable with this because I think it pressures the Jhin a lot more than what it is. But I do run the risk that this feels like it's way out of left field for the side of Cerberus. Like, this is ringing a bell as being like, okay, this is not a Cerberus type composition that they're playing into Burst the Sky. And I wonder if they are doing a bit of limit testing right before our patch swap, before everything kind of goes into disarray, seeing whether Pos is working and whether they can design a team composition around him to actually make success work against a middling team, not a bad team by any standard, but a team that probably they're favored against pretty heavily.
𝘁𝗶𝗶, thoughts on the draft?
Yeah, I pretty much have to agree with that. By rights, I would look at Sky's composition and say I would rather play that. But Cerberus, yeah, I feel like going for the pivot into the jungle for the Graves is a little bit of the wrong move compared to keeping it top lane, because yes, playing towards the Pos as your main carry seems like a solid idea, but I think Graves would have been a better champion for that overall. A bit more self-reliant, but I guess the Camille split push is always an option. I think overall I would say BTS have a better comp, but I can't bet against Cerberus. It's too hard to.
Okay. Well, to be honest, I think we saw a bit of that yesterday with the 𝘀𝗀𝗋∞ Team Secret game.
If we get a
Rebel
repeat of yesterday, I'm gonna
What,
cry.
with both Cerberus and Burst the Sky playing the worst that they've played all year?
Yeah.
Well, Hopefully not. Hopefully we get to see a cracking series. And Rebel, as you've touched on before, Cerberus are not prone to losing. We have seen them drop games so far this split, but they always bounce back and they always look far and away the better team over the entire series.
That they do. I think even if in game one things go awry, they can always kind of lean back on and say, all right, Pun's coming back in. We're going back to stock standard stuff. We don't have to get crazy. We can put a better position for 𝘀𝗀 on the map, better champion for the likes of Artemis. This is experimental and they're trying. I do think, again, in terms of like standard team fighting, there's quite a bit of value that could come about from this team. And so maybe that's what they're banking on. It's just that, again, in the later game team fighting, it's very hard to contest Cerberus in general. And if their composition is designed for it, especially against 𝘀𝗀𝗀 and 𝘁𝗀c𝗁𝗀 and that kind of thing, maybe it's a lot harder for the late game for 𝘀𝗀 here. So maybe that's their idea is like, worst case scenario, we just take this super late and they can't beat us.
Now we got to hear 𝘁𝗀𝗀𝗀's thoughts about the draft. We'll be hearing more from her after this opening game. But we are onto the Rift. Cerberus and 𝘀𝗀𝗀, both teams winning all three of their series from week 2. And for 𝘀𝗀𝗀, a chance to join in with the top 3 of Cerberus, 𝘀𝗀, and 𝘀𝗀𝗀 if they could win this series, Rebel.
They can. Again, I think it's an important split. Cerberus doesn't much care about this game other than the fact that they are contesting with 𝘀𝗀𝗀, who are right behind them, and 𝘀𝗀, who are on a pretty big tear. 𝘀𝗀 only lost against the 2 of those teams as well in the early part of the split. I remember week 1 we were talking about, oh, is 𝘀𝗀 really bad? Oh, is 𝘀𝗀 like having struggles? Has 𝘀𝗀 fallen off? And then all of a sudden they go on a 5-game win streak and we're like, oh, it's normal 𝘀𝗀. They played 𝘀𝗀𝗀 and Cerberus in literally the first week of the season in almost an unexpected fashion. They were able to kind of like lose out on those games, even though they were hotly contested in a few of those kind of decisions. So this is Cerberus. I mean, they're obviously like very set up to win. They're definitely looking to win in the series just to make sure they keep that 1-game advantage over the top of 𝘀𝗀𝗀. And for the side of 𝘀𝗀, again, I feel like differentiation away from Saigon Buffalo and SBTC, depending on how their series later goes, is going to be humongous for momentum coming into the second half of the split. Because again, this is a team that's really accustomed to winning that often. So seeing them be more competitive against one of our top teams would go a huge way to vouching for just how talented and how competitive they're going to be coming into the back half of the split.
Now, we have seen both the junglers of Ego and 𝘀𝗀𝗀 starting on their red buffs. This does mean that 𝘀𝗀𝗀's now on the bottom side of the map. Ego's towards the top side. And I want to touch on this 𝘁𝗀𝗀𝗀 pick because we might be seeing Ego playing towards finding a gank on Ryuk. Because that 𝘁𝗀𝗀𝗀, how does the 𝘁𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 matchup go, and what can we really expect from Ryuk on the champion when we get towards team fights?
I see it picked into 𝘁𝗀𝗀 a fair amount. I think in terms of just like pure one-on-one situation, after a little bit of time, especially after a little bit of armor gets built by the likes of the 𝘁𝗀𝗀𝗀, it's not particularly easy for the 𝘁𝗀𝗀 to really win out in terms of side lane pressure. And then in terms of team fighting, also 𝘁𝗀𝗀𝗀 has her strengths in terms of being able to die, being able to set up things with her ultimate. But 𝘁𝗀𝗀𝗀's kind of unmatched ability to completely tear apart a neutral objective with an ultimate, especially against the likes of Ego if he decides to greed and go for more damage instead of going for a QSS or something important like that. I mean, you take out so much of the team fighting prowess if you take out that marksman role. And again, it's going to be the Graves this time, which doubles up as the jungle pick as well.
𝘁𝗀 engaging, it forces a flash out from Artemis. Oh, that's a nice satchel charge. 𝘁𝗀 will fall, Ron OP with a flash away. Teleport comes in from 𝘀𝗀. They're able to find the stun down onto 𝘀𝗀𝗀. The bomb bounces narrowly close. Deadly Flourish will get the lockdown onto Artemis. One more auto, and it is 𝘀𝗀𝗀 who picks up the kill. Both mid laners teleporting down to the party, and it will be a 1-for-1 overall, but crucially, Rebel, it is a first blood going over to Artemis's Ziggs.
I think extremely valuable for the Ziggs to have the first blood because it allows you to buy the tier, the Doran's Ring, and it starts you into what is going to be your lost chapter item, which is humongous. But I actually think that 𝘀𝗀𝗀 is okay with the trade. Taking away kind of global pressure for 𝘀𝗀𝗀 and getting a kill into the hat of the 𝘁𝗀𝗀𝗀 increases wave pressure because you end up getting the itemization, the AP a lot earlier inside of the game, and hopefully it gets you in a position where eventually, again, those chains start to really ramp up damage against 𝘀𝗀𝗀, and eventually the Lissandra starts losing those in-game trades. So these kill in the earlier stage for 𝘁𝗀𝗀𝗀 LeBlanc feels a lot more valuable if somehow Sky are able to take the advantage they get for it. And this was, I mean, it was started by 𝘀𝗀, who actually found a decent little pull. I was really worried that 𝘀𝗀 was going to go down during the course of this, and that it was going to turn into an absolute disaster if they couldn't actually get anything else, because especially after 𝘀𝗀 dodged the bomb, we knew 𝘁𝗏 was going to die to these chains. Like, there was no way that the Ziggs was getting out of this situation with a combination of the very single target focus damage from the Jhin and the LeBlanc in the earlier stages. So very, very close to being disastrous. Thankfully, 𝘀𝗀 able to sneak out the back of that fight and not turn this into a 2-kill situation for 𝘀𝘀, where all of a sudden your bottom side has fallen to pieces.
Something important to bring up is Artemis now ahead, has a kill to their name. And when we talk about Cerberus, we're always talking about Artemis. Can he get ahead? If Artemis gets ahead, Cerberus does well. But when you look over to 𝘀𝘀 and you've got a LeBlanc on your team, it is so imperative that you can get this LeBlanc ahead so that the LeBlanc can roam around. And we talk about how good 𝘀𝗀 is as a player for BTS. And guess what? 𝘀𝗀's the one with the kill for 𝘀𝘀 here, so I think this sets up a really nice narrative as 𝘂𝗀 into the bottom lane, gets a stun onto 𝘀𝗀. 𝘀𝗀 now trying to turn this around, will be able to get the knock-up onto 𝘁𝗀, locked down, but the shield comes through from 𝘀𝗀 onto 𝘁𝗀, and 𝘁𝗀 picks up the kill. Artemis getting run down, 𝘁𝗀's going to be able to pick up that one. So much AoE damage coming through from the top laner of 𝘀𝘀, but there's an ultimate available for 𝘁, and it will be able to pick up the kill from 𝘀𝗀. 𝘂𝗀 able to take the claw out to safety. Deadly Flourish gets the lockdown onto 𝘁, 𝘁𝗀rate. Almost picking up another kill. 𝘀𝘀 get 2 kills for 1.
I mean, 𝘀𝘀 are able to kind of counteract this play excruciatingly well. I love that 𝘂𝗀 was able to find a timer off the back that LeBlanc had come to bottom lane off the TP, got a kill, and then immediately returned to mid lane to catch a wave and had to be covered by 𝘀𝗀, and to force this really rough back timer for the likes of what was 𝘀𝗀 in the mid lane. And we were worrying about that, but off this timer, it is the combination of this team kind of getting broken apart a little bit late to the play. Also was 𝘂𝗀 and �ryuk's ability to come in and be this disruptor as this very powerful Mordekaiser in the earlier stages with this AoE damage was just enormous, because that could have been disastrous. If that ends up with 2-3 kills off the front of that play, especially if they're able to get the bot lane before they can get back to tower, all of a sudden your Lissandra is way more powerful inside of this game, and the teleport ends up not mattering at all for the likes of 𝘁𝗀 if he even survives the situation. But because they stall out, because they created this little gap in Cerberus's plan on that bottom side, it meant that they everything kind of got thrown into disarray, and it meant that 𝘁𝗀's presence and their ability to bring down one target was enough to thwart everything. And it also bought space for 𝘀𝗀 to just clear out mid lane, because up until that point, again, the rough back timer had actually cost him a little bit of CS, was able to return effectively. So now 𝘂𝗀, 2 roams across the map, which has been great for the Lissandra, but ineffective so far in getting all that much. The 1 assist, not what you really want into the LeBlanc in the earlier stages of the game. You're looking for further aggression than this, trying to take advantage before the LeBlanc starts to come online and be the lane bully that's going to be able to push the Lissandra out.
𝘁𝗀 engaging with the Zenith Blade, forces a flash from 𝘀𝗀. So much damage! And Artemis is going to be able to pick up the kill onto 𝘀𝗀. 𝘀𝘀 on the run. 𝘀𝗀 forced to flash, but he's in human form. He can't run. Artemis will get the double kill. And it was starting to look good for 𝘀𝘀, but now Cerberus find themselves with a kill lead. Cerberus find themselves with a goal lead as well. And I think Cerberus might be finding themselves with a Rift Herald. Here's a replay of how the play kicked off.
It's 𝘀𝘀 who pretty much across the board are set up for the Rift Herald on the top side. Well, or my apologies, 𝘀𝘀 who are trying to move into the Rift Herald pit, but the setup's already there from Cerberus, because again, they're using what is effectively like the lost play tempo to display on the map really, really quickly to make sure that they're the ones who are first in position, which is what happened right there, was that Leona was in a position they weren't expecting. They had 3 members. I don't know if I think 𝘀𝗀 had returned thinking maybe that the E wasn't going to hit him. If that hadn't hit him, that whole play probably would not gone as well as it did. But because it allowed for 𝘁𝗀 to get on top, it sets up the Lissandra play, and the rest of the kills really come through after the attempted peel from 𝘁𝗀 comes out. So it's a nice little catch just off the back of knowing that every single VCS team is always going to perpetually flip around the first Rift Herald of the game for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And here is there's no break to it. Cerberus gets there first. They end up getting the really quick gorilla kill out of the grass, and it means that they snag quite a bit more in the earlier stages, because again, their composition does well in the later stages when you have this AoE to work with, when you got Artemis on a couple of items and is poking away on Ziggs, and even better, 𝘂𝗀 is, even in terms of farm, has not really been outganked by the likes of 𝘀𝗀, and now has the Rift Herald to his pocket.
𝘁 going to deny the 𝘁𝗀rate with a Hextech ultimatum as 𝘂𝗀 shows up to the play, but 𝘁𝗀 is more than happy. He's down to half health, and 𝘂𝗀 does have the Rift Herald, which he can drop down if he wants to put some gold into 𝘁's pocket, but instead he's going to back, uses the Empower Recall, will be able to return. I want to touch back on that on the mid lane play, because I think that was really well played from 𝘀𝗀, or maybe badly played by 𝘀𝗀, depending on how you want to look at it. Because as soon as 𝘀𝗀 went in with that distortion on the wave, 𝘀𝗀 said, okay, I showed myself. What are you going to do? You return back to your original position? Well, I just tag you with the Zenith Blade. You don't go back? Well, then you're probably going to die anyway.
Out of complete fairness, again, I don't know that 𝘀𝗀 was expecting that Zenith Blade to hit him after he teleported back. He might have thought the ability was a little bit later, mistimed it slightly, or even thought that maybe he was going to get fished out in front with something like the ultimate coming out, something along those lines. So just getting thrown off by that ability, it allowed for a little counterplay after the fact.
Ethereal chains the miss. 𝘁𝗀 goes in.
Very nice.
So much damage. 𝘁𝗀 gets a pop. Can't even use the ultimate to keep themselves alive. 𝘀𝗀 forced to flash to get himself out to safety, as the collateral damage has been used. 𝘀𝗀 actually kind of in kill range pretty much. An auto and an ult would be enough to take them down. It will just be a Rift Herald being dropped, and Ego says, haha, my mid lane is dead. That means all of this tower plate gold is for me.
Yeah, they still have the hover of 𝘁𝗀, so it's not going to end up meaning all that much. As soon as the eye gets tagged, it's going to be down. That is a teleport and a half, just making sure that they stay honest, I suppose, underneath the mid tower. Maybe trying to set up some semblance of a dive of Unofficial, but I'm not in love with that decision. I guess 𝘂TO is just going to try to jump this this back timer for 𝘀𝗀 again and attempt to push this a little better. This is the problem with Aftershock on the likes of Lissandra, because once it's burnt, there is no preventing damage. And here I know it's 3 full members. Watch 𝘁𝗀 here too. He blocks that ultimate with his body, and that prevents the full shell from hitting either 𝘀𝗀 or 𝘀𝗀, which I think is really, really gorgeous. Nice movement from Artemis. I'm really happy they came back so quickly as to show us this, because again, I was a little curious about why 𝘂TO was that kind of aggressive with the teleport to get back in the lane, because again, you're not picking up that many minions, you're down 30 already, but this was the full intention, was to make sure that that last turret plate was going to get attacked before Ziggs gets to come up and execute the tower with the bomb, and now this unlocks Lissandra for the rest of the map. It's so much harder now for 𝘀𝗀 to get out of the lane and really be effective across the map the way that Lissandra can now that her tower is down.
And good stuff from Artemis, picking up some tower plates, and in the early stages of the games, Artemis not able to do much. It ended up dying twice, but as soon as that lost chapter was completed, started to have more of an impact. Now with the Ludens completed, 200 stacks on the tier item. Well, tower plates to the name as well. 30 CS up on 𝘂𝗀. Things are looking pretty good for Cerberus in the bottom lane, as they tend to.
It seems to be a continuing trend, and a lot of that is Artemis. But I mean, to speak on 𝘀𝗀 too, because 𝘀𝗀 has actually been around for a fair amount of time, and despite kind of being traded on and off with the roster with 𝘂𝗀 in the previous split, which I think was more of a champion pool thing than it was actually a gameplay thing, because 𝘀𝗀 has still been a very good support for the majority of his career, which has been quite nice. That's not also to be said about 𝘂𝗀, because 𝘂𝗀's had some rough years, but last season just happened to be a really good one. But even after 𝘂𝗀 had this this very different usable champion pool and had some really good games, they still would default to going back to 𝘀𝗀 as one of their supports, just because they needed to make that kind of thing happen. Look at that, the chains, 𝘂𝗀's definitely coming in. 𝘂𝗀's just burning time here.
Yeah, Frozen
Probably.
2 comes through.
Ooh.
Mimic Distortion.
Oh,
Flash
never
over the wall from 𝘀𝗀. He wants this one. Ethereal chains are in. The bomb will be
wow.
able to get a kill back. And Artemis is just getting more and more kills under his belt.
I'm really shocked that that chain combo, I think maybe the market expired or something along those lines, because that damage from the chain, especially proccing afterwards, almost certainly should have been enough from 𝘀𝗀. I know he didn't build much AP, but there is literally no magic resistance, and there was no aftershock for the likes of 𝘂𝗀, and especially once that's down right here, I'm really surprised. The Glacial Tomb, gorgeous. The Flash was also gorgeous to set up the E, but it was right here. I really got to see. What is he on? 500 health, first mark. Yeah, okay, he got the full mark damage, just wasn't enough. That's really crazy. I thought that was going to be enough to execute him right there, but 𝘀𝗀 just not far enough in on the LeBlanc to be able to pop that before the Artemis ult comes in. So the tankiness of LeBlanc just kind of prevails despite being down 30 CS. That's the value, I guess, of getting that early tower plating and just playing Lissandra in general against the legs, just trying to stall out that play as fast as possible.
Just a reminder, actually, it wasn't 𝘂𝗀 who got many of those tower places. We've got to play over the second Drake of the game, stolen away by 𝘀𝗀. Ego kicked out, but he will fall nonetheless. 𝘂𝗀 joining into the fray as the curtains are called. They're looking to try to get onto Artemis.
Nice.
And Artemis flipped by 𝘁𝗀 and delivered into the waiting arms of 𝘂𝗀. 𝘀𝗀 distorting forward. Do they want to go for this one? Do they want to go under the tower? 𝘁𝗀 tanking up 3 tower shots, and at that point, 𝘀𝗀 says, I can't do this. We're backing out.
Not going to worry too much. Not going to go after the tanky Leona. So many times did we see between other professional leagues, especially at Worlds, where we saw so many teams just burn a number of resources into an Aftershock Leona and accomplish absolutely nothing. And so appreciated to 𝘀cie, who's actually going to even stop the back timer without even knowing that he's right there. The best part of that whole play, again, the Dragon, the kill onto the likes of Ego, and 𝘀cie being able to pick up a kill into the likes of Artemis, and now further pressure onto the bottom lane. They might actually get full tower gold for 𝘀cie on bottom side. All set up again off the back of just an engagement. Ego trying to solo this, but he doesn't have pressure in the mid lane. They work through 𝘀cie. They're working through making sure 𝘁𝘶andra is not going to be a plays reverse. I like this also. Again, this ultimate shot that comes in and is able to snag Artemis at the very end was kind of nice. I would have preferred this glow onto LeBlanc because I think LeBlanc, they're so close to getting her broken out to where she's going to be able to take over the map. But again, it's not bad either because, again, 𝘀cie has been having an amazing split of his own and is able to do quite a bit of work on this Jhin when it comes to 𝘁𝘶andra coming in on a fight, Graves trying to come in on a fight, 𝘁𝗀 trying to come in on a fight. So it's perfectly fine for the Jhin to grab that.
And I'm really pleased with 𝘀𝘀 so far because they are keeping Cerberus honest. They're not playing entirely defensive, they're making plays, they're trying to find ways back into the game, and they find themselves leading in the goal department, not by much, but they are ahead. It's practically an even game at this point. 𝘀𝗀ie 2-0, and to be able to be 2-0 in a lane against Artemis, even if you are 20 CS down, is still a good achievement.
I would say so. The Jhin is still going to have problems, I guess, accessing this team for the majority of the time, especially because even if you have a good setup for your ultimate during the course of the beginning of a fight, you can get challenged pretty quickly by the combination of what is like the Leona ultimate. You thought about Yato getting in on top of him with like an E and a flash and things of that sort. Being challenged by Pause in the backline with the 𝘁𝗆 hookshot, things like that. But that doesn't mean that there's no possibility for 𝘀𝗀ie to be able to actually have an impact in a lot of these fights. Again, my real fear comes down to just like if you were to play a standard 5-on-5 type team fight, how would it go? With Yato being down so far, I mean, you know, Yato with the tower was really effective, and they're putting a bunch of the resources from this mid lane into Artemis the majority of this time, really banking on him being able to do a bunch of the carrying during the course of this game. But you do run the risk of sacrificing some of that 5-on-5 with the 𝘁𝘶andra being so far behind in the game.
Again, we saw Artemis just roaming towards the top side, able to use Satchel Charge, picking up the second tower of the game for the side of Cerberus. Speaking of seconds, second Drake picked up by 𝘀𝘀, might be able to pick up a third Drake as well in a couple of minutes' time. It is an Ocean Rift and an Ocean Soul for the side of 𝘀𝘀, especially when you're looking towards the likes of Ryuk on the Mordekaiser and drakthar on this Lee Sin, would be very handy.
Props to drakthar, who's actually taken quite a bit of the effort into tracking and bringing down Ego during the course of this game. Because normally Ego just kind of Goomba stomps over any jungler that's sitting across from him and runs the show on most things. Were it not for that really nice kind of like bush play and faster rotation off the back of a bottom lane play that went the way of 𝘀𝘀e, basically if it weren't for this proper rotation coming out of the likes of Cerberus towards this Rift Herald and the setup that they had towards it, 𝘀𝘀 probably would have been on 4 full objectives in the early stages of the game. And yes, I mean, you're down some CS as the Lee Sin, but you have a good effect on the map. And now, I mean, 𝘀𝟀's in some trouble, but it's LeBlanc. Oh!
No. Oh, the frozen path comes through. 𝘀𝟀 needs to outplay this drakthar on the way. Ethereal Chains, they come in. They go straight on for Ego. Obliterate flash forward by Ryuk. He misses out the combo. drakthar trying to go in as Elio joining into the party. Locked down. Is drakthar taken down? Curtain call comes through. 𝘀𝟀 landing the Ethereal Chains. Will be able to get the lockdown onto Paz. 4th shot will connect. It's a double kill coming in for Ryuk, and 2 for 1 in favor of 𝘀𝘀. 3 for 1, pardon me.
So now we actually get our first semblance look at a team fight, and there is a massive problem that I guess we didn't talk about on the side of Cerberus when it comes to taking these fights. When you have single target damage, the likes of the LeBlanc and a Jhin, usually it's really good to have multiple frontliners, right? And when you've got 𝘁𝗆e and you've got LeBlanc or 𝘁𝘶andra and you've got Leona, there's not much of a problem. This ultimate from Mordekaiser kind of rips your team to pieces. If you have all 3 of them forward and you can focus down one person at a time because Mordekaiser takes one out of the fight, and all of a sudden Paz is your only frontliner, or Leona's your only frontliner, or 𝘁𝘶andra's your only frontliner, and you just get ripped to pieces by the likes of the single target damage, it becomes a massive issue. 𝘀𝟀, amazing job stalling that initial play. I was thinking 𝘀𝗀 was going to be able to catch up at some point during this, but just watch what happens, because Drakthar spikes down 𝘂o immediately and then gets taken out of the fight. And now look who's on the front line. Yes, you've got 𝘀𝗀. Yes, you've got Boss, but you've got a bunch of people who's able to focus individual members of this fight one at a time. It was started off with 𝘂o, then you have 3 members on the next, and then you've got 3 members on the next. And the support's there from Artemis. 𝘀𝗀 probably needed to be in and about in the scrap of that in order to really try to push back in the course of this fight, but it was dead by the time that the 𝘂o ultimate had come through. But this is something you have to track later, is how much of the single target damage from the side of Skye is being able to be applied to single people who are in. You don't want to do, I like to call it stormtroopering, which is where maximum 2 people are in the fight at a time for Cerberus, because they're waiting for cooldowns from Artemis or 𝘂o or 𝘀𝗀 to throw in additional damage, and in that time period, they're just getting blown up, because if you do that, 𝘀𝗀cije will just have a complete heyday taking down whatever person happens to be in front of them.
11 kills to 6 versus Skye. Well, the gold is very even, but BTS are on sole point as we'll get a replay, because there was a mini fight that occurred in the mid lane.
Kind of incredible. It was a mid lane setup from the side of 𝘀𝗀cie, who were attempting to use this Rift Herald to set up what I assume to be 3rd Dragon, and it was an attempted jump in tempo from the likes of Cerberus, something that they don't do super often, or they don't do illegally a lot of the time. And it's really interesting because they get punished for it. BTS are playing excruciatingly clean League of Legends when it comes to responding to Cerberus. Somehow Cerberus have been able to equalize this gold. I think a lot of it off the back of ambient towers that they've been able to take over the course of the game. But when that starts to run dry, all of a sudden, it has been 𝘀𝗀cie winning every fight, winning most of the neutral objectives over the course of this game. And again, most of your gold right now is concentrated into Ziggs, and then there's a little bit kind of concentrated into 𝘂o, maybe a tiny bit into Boss. But there's really not this massive damage source to be able to use in a 5-on-5 team fight. They're relying heavily on the Ziggs to be able to do the heavy carrying in the later stages of the game. But that's really tough to do without a frontline that's going to be able to survive, especially when, 𝘂𝗀 is actually in a really good place. 𝘁𝗀𝗀 is in a really good place. 𝘁𝗀𝗀kaiser is in an amazing place with 3 kills.
𝘁𝗀 trading onto 𝘂𝗀, not able to land the ethereal chains, otherwise 𝘀𝗀cie might have been able to pull the trigger in its entirety. But I'm loving the VCS winter split so far, because we came into this thinking, okay, BTS and 𝘀𝗀ie, they're probably going to be at the bottom of the split again. And that we've been so far from that completely. The first series we saw from 𝘀𝗀cie, which was against Team Flash, we saw BTS picking up hang on, actually, was it BTS? No, it was BTS against the 𝘀𝗀ie. We saw 𝘀𝗀ie picking up the win, and we said, okay, 𝘀𝗀ie kind of looked okay, but it's just the worst 2 teams playing against each other. 𝘀𝗀ie went on to look so good, and they're sitting second. 𝘀𝗀cie did not have a great first week, but the second week has gone very well for them. And now, with this performance against Cerberus, they're showing, okay, maybe in the VCS, it's not a top 3. It is a top 4, with BTS being that 4th team in there. And if they can keep this form up, who knows? Maybe they could even be in the top 3, the top 2 come the end of the split.
If they keep this form up at minimum, they're going to be competitive and they're going to make playoffs, unless there is dramatic improvement from the likes of Saigon and SBTC behind them. Actually, Drakthar, okay, I was worried that this was going to end up in something, but it's not, at the moment at least. I want to talk about our observations coming into the split were so subverted in a number of different ways. And the biggest one that changed for me, really, was top lane. Where, last split, 𝘀 didn't have a particularly good split. Nagia didn't have a particularly good split. Ryuk didn't have a particularly good split. None of them were particularly impressive. And this split, I mean, 𝘀 has become a star. We don't know why 𝘀 is playing, and I guarantee you it's not going to be 𝘀 playing if Cerberus lose this game. That's not going to happen. We're not going to see 𝘀 2 games in a row, unless they really are limit testing for the second half of the split. But Ryuk has actually been, I think, really impressive to me in the fact that Ryuk finds himself in really good positions more often than not, and even though his stats don't show it, it's a very rare situation where if you look up Ryuk's stats, you're probably going to be like, yeah, he's not that good. But if you watch game tape, even in games where he goes 3, 5, and 3, he's usually in the right place. Indecision plagues his team, bad team fighting plagues his team. When he played Renekton, I specifically remember the 3-5-3 Renekton performance from just last week, where so many times he found himself in the backline and was able to do half the health bar of 3 enemies, usually trade 1 kill off, but then there was nothing else in the fight, but it took so much wind out of the sails of the other team that it was able to be a full reset for his own squad. And there's no benefit to that unless you actually get something on game tape, because it's like, okay, we didn't get to see that kind of aspect. And 𝘁𝗀 has found himself in so many of these situations. In this game, has been really good on the Mordekaiser into 𝘀𝗀, this weird kind of pinch-hitting top laner for absolutely no reason. Again, my expectation against 𝘀 is that this lane's going to go a little bit differently, but 𝘁𝗀's performance, I think, has been understated for the majority of this split. And one of the best comeback player kind of candidates that we have inside of everything, alongside maybe 𝘁𝗀, maybe 𝘁𝗀es, players like that on the top team in 𝘀𝗀cie. But I think 𝘁𝗀 should be in that conversation as well.
And I'm really glad that you brought up this point as well, because it's something I did want to touch on, because week 1 𝘁𝗀 and week 1 𝘀𝗀 as well at that didn't look particularly great, especially 𝘁𝗀 in the spring split, as you mentioned. But week 2 𝘁𝗀 has looked fantastic. Week 2 𝘀𝗀 a lot better than what we saw in week 1, at least when he was playing Talon and Udyr. Please don't play that again. But we've got an engaged solo flare. Is denied. It's going to be a 2-man Magnet Storm coming through. 𝘀𝗀 re-engaging. The focus onto Ron OP so far. They're going to be able to get a knock-up. Still no one's died. 𝘀𝗀ie chasing Artemis out of the fight. The curtain calls are coming through. 𝘀𝗀ie burning down low, but it is just the mirror image. Somehow no one's died just yet, but 𝘁𝗀 will finally fall. 𝘀𝗀 on a sliver of HP, so is 𝘀𝗀. He's going to get taken down as 𝘀𝗀mine looks towards the 𝘂𝗀. Deadly Frush will get the snipe down. Zenith Blade tags onto 𝘂𝗀mine, who's going to be able to find the kill regardless, and 𝘀𝗀sky come out on top. 3 kills for 2. Now they look towards Ego, who almost actually gets the combo off on 𝘀𝗀ie. Ego's going to be able to heal up a little bit with the fruit, running for the hills. 𝘂𝗀mine has the 4th shot. 𝘀𝗀ie on the chase. So is 𝘁𝗀. There's nowhere out for Ego right now. You've got to feel bad for him. Can he make an outplay? 𝘀𝗀ie just fishing, just trying to bait out Autos, trying to bait out end of the lines. And in the end, it's just all going to be left to 𝘁𝗀, who picks up the kill. Meanwhile, Artemis is playing 6, so he can just push in the mid lane and get the inner tower.
It's a big problem. I don't mind that, but let's talk about the start of this fight, because this fight goes kind of insane to begin with. And it all starts with, like, 𝘀𝗀 thinks he gets caught, the teleport in and the re-engage. Amazing from 𝘁𝗀, who another player I'll touch on a little bit later, probably on our death segment a little bit. But the fact that, like, they get so much damage off into this front line, they can't put all this damage in. Jin's a little bit too far back. 𝘀𝗀ie can't quite find the kill onto Artemis, but they've shoved out so much damage. All of a sudden, it's like 𝘀𝗀s gets 1 kill, but nobody is in fighting shape for this. 𝘂𝗀 is the only one above 50% health, and they're able to focus down one member at a time, because this fight gets split into so many different areas. You start with one, Ego gets shoved out the other side of that one, then you see the focus onto 𝘂𝗀, then it shifts immediately onto the likes of Ron OP, and they're picking their targets individually. Now, we talk about this, most of the time I don't like plays like this. I'm like, okay, just let him go and go turn for an objective or something, but this actually lets you snag the jungler off the map as well as one of the main damage dealers, and this is what I was waiting for, was the Baron call immediately afterwards on the redeploy, where they weren't going to have somebody up. There is a fight potentially kind of brewing in this process. That was nutty.
Ron OP kicked over the wall. 𝘂𝗀mine is on the run. He's going to get spotted out by Ego. No! He misses the collateral damage. Meanwhile, we've got him engaged from 𝘀𝗀, dropping down the Hextech ultimatum, but 𝘀𝗀s is pulled into the death realm. Does he have enough damage? Lockdown is a big shield for 𝘁𝗀, but he will eventually fall. 2 members sacrificed by the side of 𝘀𝗀sky to be able to secure the Baron and to allow 𝘀𝗀 and 𝘂𝗀mine to be able to survive. Also, while we were watching that replay, Cerberus were able to get the Ocean Drake,
where it looks like they kind of split on different sides of everything. And this was a little strange, because I kind of wanted 𝘀𝗀sky to go to Baron, but I wanted them to turn off the Baron with a Mordekaiser ultimate to set themselves up. Yeah, 𝘂𝗀mine's not just the pathing, but also 𝘀𝗀's kick over the pit. The funnier part was Ego's going to get cut off, but he actually missed the ultimate that would have denied a bunch of that. It's a nice flank from 𝘀𝗀s to be able to deny play from 𝘁𝗀 here, where 𝘁𝗀 just got to face tanks 𝘀𝗀s for a little bit with this ultimate, but he's pretty dead to the wind. And I like that 𝘀𝗀 throws in the final Qs just to try to pull something back. It is a Baron buff. It's not that effective. It's really unfortunate, because, again, I think the real benefit to doing that is to try to full turn onto the enemy team if they go for Dragon and try to bait them into like a 4v5 type situation after Ego was late to come back or something along those lines, but they end up falling victim. They just end up taking that Baron. They lose multiple members, and it ends up being a kind of equal across the board, and all you've done is shut yourself out from the 4th dragon that could have been your soul point, which would have made a massive difference.
Either way, the gold is practically dead even at this point. It is such a tight game right now, Rebel. It's not what we expected coming in, but 𝘀𝗀sky are doing a fantastic job so far of keeping Cerberus honest. And the question becomes, can they do this over the course of the series? Will we get, you know, something like what we saw yesterday with 𝐾AM and Saigon Buffalo, where there's a sketchy game, and then Cerberus just clean sweep game 2 and game 3 and just make it look like it was never even a contest?
We talked about the draft is a little bit wonky. We talked about the fact that Boss is starting when like he started, I think, 1 game for the entirety of the split. This is not full strength Cerberus, or this is not, Cerberus fully loaded during the course of this. I think there's plenty more to what the team can bring out. And again, they can go back to stock standard. They can go back to saying, hey, Artemis, you're going to play Xayah, you're going to play Jinx, you're going to play something carry oriented, and we're just going to rely on you. And that might just be enough to win the game, right? Like, that's a possibility here. 𝘀𝘀_𝘀𝗀, they're not even in perfect position to technically win this game, because again, their composition's still relatively hard to play in the later stages. They still have the problem of like, how are they actually going to end up killing Artemis, because getting onto him is going to be difficult unless 𝘀𝗀 and 𝘀𝗀 finds a way to challenge him into the backline, which is not the easiest thing to do into this team. It's tough.
I want to touch on that quickly, because regarding how Artemis gets into the fights, I think we actually saw that very nicely highlighted in the previous fight in the mid lane, where 𝘀𝗀 was able just to bully Artemis out of that fight entirely.
Yes, and that's contingent, I think, on the initial engagement on the front going the way of 𝘀𝘀_𝘀𝗀. The issue is when, again, it's more of a matter of, again, if I call it trenching, where it's like, okay, if you set up battle lines and you start letting Artemis throw artillery over the battle lines to the side of 𝘀𝘀_𝘀𝗀, it's a lot harder for 𝘀𝗀 to just say, I'm going to go challenge him, unless you have a really solid flank angle or you have no vision on the side of Cerberus in that particular area. Because then you're jumping into what is Lissandra ultimate, you're jumping into Camille ultimate, you're jumping into Ron OP, and these members who can lock you up. So it's a lot harder, and that's what you kind of need to do. You're creating this bunker of champions around Artemis to be able to work with, whereas in the fight that happened, a lot of that bunker got moved forward to begin with, because there was a bunch of exchange on the front line, and when health bars started getting trained, in the middle of everything, 𝘀𝗀 was able to find a challenge onto him in the backline, and suddenly the Ziggs can't actually contribute anything to the fight, which is the ideal way 𝘀𝘀_𝘀𝗀𝗀 wants to do it, but it's a lot harder to get that consistently.
Well, 𝘀𝘀_𝘀𝗀𝗀, the Baron buff has drawn to a close. We've got Ocean Drake in 15 seconds. Teleport now coming through from BTS, but the LeBlanc is a lockdown. That's a really nice Magnet Storm coming through to all the members of Cerberus, and the bomb won't do too much damage from Artemis. 𝘀𝗀 just trying to find something on to 𝘬𝗏, possibly. Elio's going to get taken down. 𝘀𝗀 over the wall as the real chains connect onto Ego. 𝘀𝗀's back up. I think this might be going the way of Cerberus. All of the members of Cerberus are solo. This fight can still go either way. The engage comes through onto 𝘀𝗀, who instantly cleanses, picks up the kill. Onto Boss, flashing forward, looking for Artemis. Needs one more to unable to find it, and Artemis goes golden to deny the sigil of malice. Somehow Artemis survives, somehow Ron OP survives. 𝘀𝗀 going back in, 𝘀𝗀 gets a kill. Ego now looking towards 𝘀𝗀. He's trying to hide behind the minions, but it doesn't matter. The end of line will snag him, as does the Q, and Ego just blows 𝘀𝗀 up with the lethality. Oh my god, Cerberus win the fight. It was so darn close, Rebel.
It really was. It's a difficult process here. Again, 𝘀𝘀_𝘀𝗀𝗀 trying to get their perfect team fight. And this is an exact example of what we were talking about, where if you have 𝘀𝗀 go too early during the course of a fight, things are going to get strained really bad, because you have to burn resources to not die as the LeBlanc, who also happens to be one of your top 2 damage dealers on the composition. And this is a perfect example of that, because 𝘀𝗀 ended up in a really bad situation, diving to try to find Artemis on a number of situations during the course of this fight. And also, 𝘀𝗀 got shoved out the back, because, where in previous fights there was this really big disruption from 𝘀𝗀 or from the likes of what was Ryuk. It was actually Pun who did a bunch of work into the backline here, where Ryuk pops the ultimate, and then you have the ultimate coming out from 𝘀𝗀 in the middle of everything after Elio gets this amazing ult. But that's not what you want. You want the Jhin auto attacking forward and being able to make plays like that. And you can see 𝘀𝗀's chunked out, not able to really get a full engagement over the course of the fight. 𝘀𝗀 does his best to try to carry this and was so darn close. Pos being able to disrupt him, ended up getting that one, and this almost on Artemis being able to find something. That W was miracle work. Is insane. And then it's just incredible. It's incredible across the board the way that this fight ended up turning out. It is also a shame that 𝘀𝗀 ended up going down, because it ended up being a miraculous part. And then this was just 𝘀𝗀. He's like, okay, I'm not going to die to an auto, and then Ego proved him wrong. So
honestly, this game has been, I think, my favorite game of the split so far. Of all of the games I've casted on, it's been neck and neck, and this game has been able to go either way. The sad thing for 𝘀𝘀_𝘀𝗀 and for 𝘀𝘀_𝘀𝗀 fans is the fact that they've been on soul point for 2 Drakes now, and both times they've not been able to get it. One time they lost the Ocean Drake, but they were able to get Baron despite losing a few members. And this time it was the mid lane fight, and Cerberus being able to pick it. Now, Baron has been started. He's down to 5,000 HP. Elio and 𝘀𝗀 are here. Magnet Storm will come through, and it's stolen by 𝘀𝗀. Oh my god, we've got a game on our hands. 𝘀𝘀_𝘀𝗀𝗀 will sacrifice 2 members for the play. but they have the Baron Nashor. They deny it away from Cerberus.
Excruciatingly undeserved Baron. Well, I can appreciate that 𝘀렇tar was able to steal it, right? Ryuk showed bot lane, no teleport. 𝘀ary also showed bot lane, no teleport. There were two of them sitting in bot lane, going for who knows what, with information going over to the side of Cerberus. The fact that they were able to somehow steal that was nothing short of a miracle for 𝘀렇tar, and they're going to get punished for it because there are 2 full members down, and they've only got the 3 to be able to defend the base. So they're almost certainly, even with the Baron buff, going to lose this inhibitor. Thankfully, you know, their mid lane's pushed out pretty far, their bot lane's pushed out pretty far, so they're not going to lose too much else off the back end of it. It is a stalling move at best for 𝘀ryk, and again, I want to reiterate, an undeserved stalling move nonetheless. Heroics to 𝘀rectar, who is going to receive a good amount of appreciation from me after the game, after everything else. The fan club always supports our king in his Lee Sin. Was it worth it? That right here? I mean, absolutely. If you give up Baron here and then they also get the top lane rotation because nobody else is available to go into bottom side, they have that massive stacked wave and they absolutely fight you in your base. And there's nothing you can do about that. So the Baron buff basically just slowed down that advancement in the top lane, prevented a team fight from potentially just ending the game in favor of the side of Cerberus. So there is that. 𝘀rectar had to go for that move because, again, that Baron probably just ends the game for Cerberus, or at least helps them set up for what is going to be like 3rd dragon in their favor, which helps them get closer to soul point, and then you take a 5-on-5 standard, which is kind of what you're trying to force against the likes of 𝘀ryk. This at least gives 𝘀cie a bit of breathing room to maybe look for some of this different style of fighting, this guerrilla fighting that suits their composition a bit more.
Honestly, you know that play? Yeah, that just reminded me of something, an old religious story, but 𝘀lie being God there and 𝘀rectar being Moses, as 𝘀lie just pulls apart the members of Cerberus and leaves like a beautiful line for 𝘀rectar just to be able to cue the Baron.
I just want to discuss this, right? Because it's super important. So many people put so much like priority into stats and talking about it. If you look at this game and you look at 𝘀lie right now, you're probably like, oh, 𝘀lie's not playing bad. 𝘀lie was having an incredible rel performance. He has been insane today. This stat line is not indicative of the performance 𝘀lie is having, and I want to see more of these engages, but finally I want to see someone follow up on this engage, because if somebody follows up on this engage from 𝘀lie's rel, things will go absolutely insane. You can see they just bullied down another inhibitor because they're just too strong. Artemis, probably 4 or 5 items in on the Ziggs, just kind of autos down towers with 1 auto attack. It's kind of insane how much damage the Ziggs does, and all they have to do, again, bunker around him, move around the map, and just let him take towers as best as possible. The Baron buff means absolutely nothing when a Ziggs can push out any other lane and probably outpush you even with the Baron buff.
Okay, Ocean Drake is coming up, and I quickly just want to touch on what you mentioned about 𝘀lie, because I fully agree with you, Rebel. 𝘀lie's been playing out of his goddamn mind this game, but here's the thing, you've got this great teamfight engage from the rel, but who's going to be good in these teamfights to be able to follow up on that? A Jhin with the single target damage? A LeBlanc who wants to be getting into the backline anyway?
Mm-hmm. In terms of composition, again, their composition wasn't something that I really liked either. I actually didn't really like either draft. It was just that for 𝘀ryk, it's like, okay, this is kind of stuff that they play, and the other side, they didn't have stuff that they played, so that's a little bit difficult. I don't know how they lost pressure in this river.
𝘀rectar, if you've got to get one steal this game, this is the steal. Solar Flare comes through. Oh my god, again! 𝘀lie is popping off. Now Artemis is dead. Ethereal chains onto Ron OP. And 𝘀rectar won't be able to steal the ocean, but it doesn't matter because 𝘀ryk are stealing the lives of Cerberus. Pos, Yano will fall to 𝘀mine. Pos on the run. 𝘀rectar with a follow. It's a double kill for 𝘀mine. And it is at 3 kills for nothing. 𝘀ryk win the fight, but again, Cerberus get the Ocean Drake.
Did you hear just seconds ago when you were saying who is going to follow up on this rel ultimate? I said specifically it's got to be Lee Sin, right? What a display of that combination in full order. 𝘀lie has been unstoppable in the rel, and finally 𝘀rectar gets a chance to not have to respond to somebody counter diving, not have to try to dive or do anything else.
Can they end the
game?
game?
Really nice kick. Can they end? They really had. They do
𝘀ry
20
has a
seconds.
teleport.
They have a chance here. They've got a wave as well. They have to force it if they're going to go for it.
𝘀ry's teleporting. It's a 3-man Solar Flare coming in instantly. The Guardian Angel going to be popped by the Lee Sin. Oh, Artemis is alive. Artemis is alive and dropping the bombs, finding the damage, picking up the kills. 𝘀ryk on the back foot, and 𝘀ryk retreating out of the Cerberus base. Now there's a teleport coming through from the side of Cerberus. 𝘀ry kills Artemis. 𝘀ry finds the kill. 2 teleports from the side of Cerberus. Can BTS defend? 𝘀rectar is resetting. Oh no, the LeBlanc back has been cancelled. So it's all on 𝘀mine. It's all on 𝘀rectar. 1 tower remaining. 𝘀𝗎𝗍 and 𝘀𝗀𝗺. What can they find? 𝘁𝗂𝗋 ultimatum is dropped. 𝘀𝗀𝗺 taken down low. He has no Guardian Angel available. It's an open Nexus. Yano so low. The curtain call comes through. He needs to find Yano. He can't. Yano is stuck, and 𝘀𝗀𝗺 threatening with the hook shot. Oh my god, Rebel, what a game.
Oh my goodness, the assassination of Artemis, this whole play sets up from just craziness, right? After the dragon gets stolen and 𝘀𝗀𝗺 wins the fight, they have nothing to do on the map. They're in such bad straits. And in any other region, you would be like, okay, what they should probably do is push out their top lane, push out their bottom lane, make sure their inhibitors are set up, especially top lane so that they could go for a Baron buff. And they say, okay, no, we're going to go in and we're going to try to end the game. Not impossible, but difficult when there's two members, and especially since the lowest death time was going to be the 𝘂𝗍, who has more than enough wave clear and all of the damage on the team, right? The response play is double TP into the top lane, which, again, very, very aggressive, very VCS fashion. The fact that Glory found an assassination on Artemis, I think, took a little bit of the wind out of the sails, even though they didn't have TP, but it meant that, you know, there wasn't this 𝘂𝗍 who was going to be able to pressure somewhere else on the map, maybe push up mid lane the entire time, and all of a sudden you end up losing your mid inhibitor while your bottom lane had been pushed the entire time looking for something else. It gets stopped. I'm really surprised that the two of them did not just throw their bodies to the Nexus and attempt to spike it down, because I really thought they had a legitimate opportunity to do that, even in the face of 𝘀𝗎𝗍. But, I mean, we're right back to a neutral state. 1,500 gold means absolutely diddly at this point. 40 minutes into the game, 3 dragons apiece. This is insane from both sides. Oh.
Cerberus trying to keep their win streak going, trying to keep the undefeated run going, trying to... Oh, 𝘀𝗀𝗺 goes in! I don't know quite what that was on 𝘁𝗍, just showing, look, I can ward hop and drop a kick if I want. Okay, 𝘁𝗀𝗆 just solo killed boss. It's a 5v4 now. 𝘁𝗀𝗆 has teleport available. There's a Baron up on the map. There's an Ocean in 1.5 minutes, and this time, Rebel, it is the most important Ocean Drake of the game, because it is soul point for both teams. Oh my god, Ego's looking for a backdoor.
Notice where 𝘁𝗆𝗆 is. Just notice. Okay,
no,
this is not the
no, what is the replay?
Play. Oh my goodness. Okay, yes,
Get out of the replay.
Is gonna be gone. Yes, Pun is gonna be back next game. We don't care. Take us back to the action, please.
Okay, there's a base. There's a base. People are dying.
Okay.
𝘀𝗀𝗆's being taken down by Artemis. Ego's being able to find a kill onto the 𝘁𝗀𝗆. Ego's got a backdoor. Ego's gonna win the game. Artemis is taken down. 𝘀𝗎𝗍𝗍 gets 1. 𝘀𝗎𝗍 gets a 2. 𝘀𝗎𝗍 gets 3. But there's a Nexus power up, and it's all on Ego. Ego's gonna end it by himself. Are you kidding me? Cerberus take game 1. Give me 2 more games of this, VCS.
Oh, it's so painful. BTS, they're fighting so much better. They're finding wins in the right situations, and they're just making the wrong calls because they have so much of their base ripped to absolute shreds. Ego, I think, even got spotted out. I wanted one person, even just the 𝘁𝗀𝗆, back, throw that, throw him in the ultimate, and there's going to be nothing there, right? Like, you can't kill 𝘁𝗁𝗆. No, it's never going to happen. And they don't slow play this game.
Yes,
yeah,
I want to see the replay of it, because I'm pretty sure Ego killed 𝘁𝗀𝗆.
Yeah, there's no TP.
Didn't have the ult out.
𝘁𝗀𝗆 doesn't have TP. Yeah, he might have actually full killed him. That's kind of insane. The fact that actually happened. Yeah, it looks like 𝘁𝗀𝗆 had backed because he was waiting in the base to teleport. Might have caught Ego red-handed while going into the base. When would he have killed him, though? That's the question. It's like, he was in the base. Did he run up
it's on
the
inhibitor. Yeah.
He just ran up on the inhibitor and killed it. That's such a weird thing to have happen, 𝘁𝗀𝗆. Again, not slow playing that at all. Must have used the ultimate and just lost because he just didn't have the damage for whatever reason. Not enough time. And what a play it could have been if you hold that backline as 𝘁𝗀𝗆 and could even just shove him off or wait for a third back timer to come in from somebody. You could take the Baron buff away. You could do so much with that timer. BTS was so close. They were within such striking distance, but Cerberus, I mean, they're experienced. They understand every position. Ego knows everything, apparently, across the map, and just refuses to quit. The inhibitor push is necessary. The 𝘂𝗍𝗍 did so much damage to the base, as it turns out. It's just unrecoverable from the side of 𝘀𝗀𝗆.
I think we need to take a short break, Rebel, and then when we return, we'll be getting 𝘁𝗎𝗆𝗀𝗆𝗆's thoughts on the game. She'll break down. Well, she's got a lot to work with. That's all I'm gonna say. We'll be back in a short bit with game 2 of this fantastic series between 𝘀𝗀𝗆 and Cerberus Esports. Stay tuned. welcome back, guys. If you weren't here for the first hour, the first game, joke's on you, really, because you missed an absolute banger of a game between 𝘀𝗶𝗶𝗹𝘀 Esports and 𝘀𝗀𝗺. It was absolutely phenomenal. Backdoors, it had everything you could want. 𝘀𝗶𝗶𝗹𝘀, the only thing that you could have wanted more was the upset of the 𝘀𝗀𝗺 taking game one.
Yeah, I mean, it was BTS absolutely. They came out the gate swinging. They played extremely well around the map, and there were good rebounds from 𝘀𝗏 that kept them close. Artemis and 𝘁𝗀 in particular really carried a lot of that early game for the side of 𝘀𝗏 to keep them within spitting distance. Then around 35 minutes, brains turned off, but hands turned on, and we just got this back and forth and the seesaw of just absolute insanity. And it came down to like both junglers getting in very crucial steals, but in the end, one comp had a Ziggs, the other one didn't have a late game threat, and it just led to.
I mean,
okay, it did have a late game threat. It was called 𝘀𝗀𝗰𝗀𝗀, but he blew his load at the end on 𝘀𝗏, and so couldn't deal with the backdoor ego on the Graves. And yeah, it was a mess. It was a mess at the end there.
Rebel, it was a mess, but it was thrilling to watch, thrilling to cast, and amazing to be a part of. Arguably the best game of the VCS split so far. I know a lot of people were talking about one of the first 𝘀𝗀𝗺 versus 𝗀𝗃 series, although I personally missed that, so I don't know where it kind of compares to that.
The first 𝘀𝗀𝗺 versus 𝗀𝗃 series was super competitive, and it was a nice one. That one felt a lot more competitive in the way that both of those teams were playing very good League of Legends at the time, and this felt like 𝘀𝗏 kind of got dragged into BTS's nonsense a little bit. Specifically, if you've ever seen the little panel of like do something and then a question mark and then profit, and it felt like that was all of the game plan for BTS, where it was like, do X move, and their game plan was great. It's like, okay, we want to do this, and they started it, and then it was question mark because that was where everything went to absolute shit and their decision making went out the window, and then it usually led to the game is even, and that's how we just repeated that process where BTS's first move was always great, their second move was questionable at best, and then they ended up and they were at the same gold as they were before. The one cool thing about this game was that BTS was oftentimes the one that was making the moves. It wasn't 𝘀𝗏 who was doing all this stuff and BTS somehow finding them caught out, somehow pulling together good team fights. It really was BTS making the proper movement on the map to start with, then making mistakes afterwards. We talk about growth for this team. This could not have been said about a team that BTS had in the previous split. This could not have been said about any of the players. We could not have talked about how well Elio played last split most of the time. We wouldn't have talked about Ryuk pretty much at all last splits, but all of them have these highlight moments during the course of the game.
Way anyway.
He played 7 games.
No, he only showed up for promo.
So, also this means 𝘁𝗄 finally gets a win, because the only other game he played for 𝘀𝗏 was a loss actually against Team Secret. We didn't have time to bring that up in the previous game, so I thought I'd bring it up now. Something else I want to bring up, 𝘀𝗶𝗶𝗹𝘀. That feels to me the first time a team has gone against 𝘀𝗏 and said, we're going to play bot side. We're going to match you bottom side and beat Artemis.
Yeah.
𝘁𝗀𝗋 was stronger than Artemis.
Yeah, especially in the early on, and that it can be partially down to the picks drafted, because normally that's not what we normally see out of Artemis. We don't see him on the Ziggs very often, but it's actually just really nice to see them say, yeah, we're going to try and attack what we recognize as your biggest strength. Yes, Ego is usually a fantastic jungler, but on the Graves, he's a little bit muted because he can't quite get in there and attack the other jungler as aggressively as he likes to. And he can't make these big gank plays compared to 𝘀𝗎𝗋. So I think it was a little bit of 𝘀𝗏 were trying something different, and that muted their really strong early game that they usually have. But then it was also attacked and taken advantage of by BTS. So a little bit of a throw on one, a little bit of a give on one side, but a lot of take on the other.
I want to take you back to that point really quick. I want to reverse. So you talked about how Artemis was like it was a game that they attacked the bottom lane on the side of Cerberus or on the side of BTS, right? And they tried to bring down Artemis, right? That is not what happened in that game at all. That did not happen. That Ziggs was never weaker than that Jhin.
Okay, he wasn't weaker.
He was never weak. He was never weaker, and he was receiving 100% of the resources from the team. Everything was going into Artemis in the early stages of the game.
That's true, but they got dunked. They got beaten up on multiple times.
I remember Artemis dying twice in the early stages of the game. That to me suggests that 𝘀𝗻𝗄 was ahead.
Okay, let's count the number of towers that he got versus the number of deaths he had.
Before the towers.
In the early stages of the game.
I think we're beyond. I think we're a little bit beyond early stages when we're by the time the tower started dropping like flies because Ziggs is a goddamn beast and needs to be nerfed.
Quite literally, Artemis just had a tower taking service. People would call him up. Pos would say, "Yo, Artemis, I've got a tower here in the top lane. I don't know if I can do that. I'm down here in the bottom lane." Artemis, get over to the top lane. You're taking this tower, and he did, and he got lots of gold. But with that, honestly, we could have an entire podcast, you know, the weekend podcast that we have, or the Monday podcast. That's no longer a podcast. It's literally just going to be talking about game one. But game one is done. Cerberus took it. We're jumping on into a game two. Rebel, nothing that got picked in game one has been banned away yet, with the exception of the Graves.
Also, Pos is still in, which is... I don't know whether they're trying to make Pos work, whether he has done something to earn the spot over Pun, whether maybe they're just giving Pun the week, maybe he wanted a vacation or something, but this feels like the incorrect decision for the side of Cerberus. I mean, you saw last game, Pos didn't play badly. I want to say Pos actually didn't play badly. As a disruptor on 𝘀𝗻𝗄, did pretty well inside of team fights, although Ryuk did kind of clap him in the one-on-one, which I will say, I will hold that conviction no matter what the situation. I would not say that. I think Pos actually did amazing in team fights a number of times being a disruptor as 𝘀𝗻𝗄, but that's pretty much the only place where he really actually shined in that game.
Well, Bobby, I'm really excited for game two. We've got a first pick Xin Zhao coming through for the side of Cerberus. It's the Viego locked in. I would absolutely love it if the Malphite got picked as well.
We're gonna get mini Malphite, the small flashy version, but pick blind. Yeah, thank you, because blind picking Alistar is probably the worst decision you could ever actually make in the game as a support. But so we have a very, very strong mid jungle duo from the side of Cerberus. Now they can look to it. This seems much more reasonable to how they would normally play. Sort of use Ego to set up Yardo and then try and snowball from there. Artemis can be held as a late game win condition. I assume they're gonna hold last pick ADC for him again, but considering how many bans were thrown that way last time, they might bring him forward a little bit, lock him onto a never mind, it's getting him.
And Rebel, once again, we've got this LeBlanc-Lissandra matchup, but it's the other way around this time. This time it's Yarrow on the LeBlanc and 𝘀𝗀 on the Lissandra. And I mean, I didn't think the Lissandra did so much, really, in game one.
The things that it accomplished were, number one, they actually had something to play around early. While Lissandra didn't actually do super well, confirming first tower with Rift Herald and Ziggs was humongous, and then using that kind of, the power of Lissandra to absorb a bunch of pressure was really significant in slowing down the very early game from the side of what was BTS at the time. Because they were trying to play around LeBlanc in the very early levels, and it eventually kind of broke, but at first it wasn't working because Yada was playing well. I'll give it that. And then in team fights, it actually bought an absurd amount of time with like the Zonias, with the ultimates, with the flash E's, things of that sort, that made it. But its role kind of diminished as the game went on. I don't disagree with you. And now, if 𝘀𝗀 continues the way he played in the previous game, and Yada also does, I have a feeling this Lissandra is going to be a bit of a menace, at least in the earlier stages of the game compared to what we saw last time. Please electrocute 𝘀𝗀. No aftershock. I want to see the electrocute from you.
I feel the big thing that hurts me about the Lissandra this game compared to last is it's paired up alongside the Jhin, so you're going to be looking towards Reek to be picking some kind of beast that can actually crank out damage from the top lane.
Actually, so I was thinking about this as we were coming into game, and I want your thoughts on this, Bobby, and I guess, 𝘀𝗀𝗋, you could chime in too when you get a chance. So imagine this composition with, like, your normal top lane, whatever you might pick, like Renekton or something, You've got a bunch of like burst, and you've got good AoE. You've got good team fighting. This might actually legitimately be one of the best pike angles I've ever seen in my entire life for Elio.
It could be an angle. I don't know how Elio's.
I don't think he plays it, but if he did, this would be the time because I think it's really good into this.
But yeah, having that pike as the way to sort of clean up and just be that extra sort of execute that you need to push the damage over the edge. This is the opposite of that.
No.
The opposite.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Nice analysis, Rebel.
Alright!
Actually, it's really good into Alistar.
It's
It
really
prevents
good into
pickups
Alistar.
from LeBlanc really well. It also shuts down really heavily Viego because it doesn't allow Reset City. It does force Ryuk into something more damage oriented, maybe like Camille in this particular case. And that's going to open up a possibility for what is the response from ADC is what it looks like is remaining, which is a little shocking to me. What the actual response is. I don't know what you put with an Alistar into a Zillion that makes this lane feel good.
Okay.
Is it locked in?
Look, I mean, forcing
Do it.
Zillion onto a Relic Shield angle makes him a little bit sad, but going for something like the Draven to do that is actually what you want to do against the support. Or you can supplement the engage and just join in with the throw everybody in at the Jhin composition.
Okay. Quickly.
Wait, that's
Rebel.
a terrible pick. What are you doing?
That's a horrid pick, yeah.
Okay.
Why are you
Rebel.
picking Kalista into this?
What would you like?
Well, Mabinogi silently more in a corner.
Yeah.
Do you know how many times Zillion has been picked so far in the VCS win split?
In the VCS, 0.
Once. Do you know who played him?
Ooh, that's a good question. Wait, I can do this. Hold on. Give me 1 second. It wasn't Elio, that's for sure. Was it Rado
Elio.
B?
No, it was Elio. And
Oh,
Elio
with
lost. And it was a very, very bad Zillion performance, and we were talking about how Elio should never play the champion again. That's how bad it was.
But on the plus side, Artemis has picked the
The worst
Kalista,
champion into a million.
and you can put a 99% slow on her, which also doubles as a 99% attack speed slow because it's Kalista and she is a wacky, wonderful, weird design. So yeah, GG.
And let's not forget, Marby, this was a Kalista picked into the
Yeah.
Zillion as well, which I feel is like a soft counter into Alistair as well, but I might be wrong on that.
It's a soft counter in the sense that you can try and bait the bot. You can try and bait the ult out of the Alistar with one of your 2 CCs, or at the very least, you drop the 99% slow on him. He hits ult, you press W, and then drop it on him again. Is GG. He wasted his ult effectively. So it's a soft counter. It lets you do a little bit more. It lets you also get through a weak laning phase because you're up against a weak laning phase support. But yeah, I think Artemis is basically just saying, almost picking Kalista to sacrifice the lane, which sounds weird because he's given a lot more engaged to someone else. And hey, if he wants to be big brain, he can later on in the game switch his Black Spear to maybe the
Who wins,
jungler.
Bobby?
Who wins? Probably Cerberus, because they keep winning things. They shouldn't.
Boris. Rebel? Who do you think wins?
Who do I think
Who do you
wins?
think
I think
wins? Yeah, who do you
BTS
think?
has dramatically done better in the drafting phase, at least. And I feel like this
Ooh.
composition also is relatively simple to play. I worry about who's actually going to carry this game from the side of Cerberus. I mean, I guess it's going to be Ego, unless they get Boss really, really involved. I don't think Artemis does it against the Zillion in the earlier stages. I think it's difficult for Yato to break out from this Lissandra lane when you're playing up against the likes of a Lissandra, Zhao. I'm sensing legitimately if it's too slow of an early game from Cerberus that they struggle, but if they attack too quickly, I mean, unless they're really able to get this Kalista Alistar anywhere else on the map, I am anticipating especially that this combination, if they can both hit 6, to be excruciatingly oppressive around that Rift Herald that is inevitably going to get flipped because it always does. And if that's the case, I mean, that's where Cerberus, I think, can really take a firm grasp of the game, is around that specific team fighting element, just because at that level 6 mark, these two are so mean inside of a team fight. But honestly, I'm in favor of BTS this time.
Well, both junglers are starting on their respective red buffs. It does mean that we might be seeing Ego looking for a gank towards this bottom side of the map, and Drakthar looking towards this top side. And To be honest, I wouldn't really mind if 𝘀𝗀𝗺 plays towards the top side of the map, gets Ryuk ahead. We saw what he was able to do on the Mordekaiser, and if he can get some gold on him with a Camille, he's going to be having so much damage come these skirmishes.
The choice of rune is actually really cool from Ryuk too, because he goes for the comet. So a lot of times you see a number of different things. I've even seen like a response of like fleet footwork specifically into the Zilean, just because you're quick trading oftentimes is how you beat him. But this is a cool adaptation because it's a combination of E and W that you're hitting him with, and on those quick trades, that comet can actually do quite a bit. Thankfully, he didn't go for the airy variant because I've seen that, which is just, to me, a little bit of degeneracy in the back pocket. Is like when somebody stoops so low as to pick airy on Camille for the like individual like W and E harassment onto a cannon. It's really frustrating. So this is Ryuk's way of trying to respond to the poke that comes out from the cannon in the range versus melee matchup. We'll see if that actually works for him. His ego, he is in really deep against his Xin Zhao.
And Ryuk has a priority. It's smited. I'm not quite sure who got it. Wind becomes lightning. Tags onto Ego. Ego has the blue buff. 𝘀𝗀𝗺 on the run. Flash. Ryuk hookshot over the wall. 𝘀𝗀𝗺 joins in. First blood to Ego. Ego's going to be able to steal the soul as well. Now goes on to Ryuk. Gets the double kill. And we said Ego maybe got a bit too aggressive. Nope. If anything, he gets the buff of 𝘀𝗀𝗺. This is not a good start for BTS.
They were like one auto off of bringing him down. Ryuk had a good roam, a nice hook shot. They went back onto him. 𝘀𝗀𝗺 with one more auto attack. If he has a Hail of Blades, almost certainly knocks him up with the last pick of Q, and that means that Ego goes down in a first blood rather than picking up a double kill. And for a team that dramatically has a composition that I am very in favor of, giving 2 kills over to what is going to be the primary carry of this team within the first 3 minutes is not the way to start the game.
And this, folks, is why you take Ignite teleport on Camille. Yes. I think that's a valid analysis point. Also, I've been hearing from Twitch chat as well that apparently 𝘁 flashed into the wall in that play. So I would like to see a replay of it to see if that is actually the case. You're not shocked at that, okay.
I'm not shocked.
However, it is still early stages of the game. Yes, Cerberus are 1,000 gold ahead. It is looking a bit scary, but... Okay, yes, it's looking very scary, but it's not Artemis who's ahead, and that's a good thing.
It is. Ego has been provably about capable of carrying to that level, and especially on a Viego, that's a terrifying prospect, just because in the future that champion gets absurd. And especially with 2 kills early on, again, it's all about trying to set up in some of these earlier stages where, again, your level 6 mark for the side of Cerberus is absurdly stronger than the side of Burst the Sky. Like, yes, you've got Zilean ultimate, which is humongous. Yes, you've got like the Glacial Tomb, which is humongous as well. But when you finally have like the 𝘁𝗀𝗺 and Alistar ult combination, and you pair that with a level 2 or 2 kill, what is a Viego in the earlier stages? Now 3 kills probably.
Ryuk is gonna flash Eco. I think he wants this under tower.
Okay, yeah, no.
Spectral more.
Good man. Don't give up that bounty. Don't give up that bounty, please.
I mean, there's a wave that was gonna crash in, and the teleport was down. I think worth. I call worth.
I suppose. It doesn't look like it's going to get crashed by 𝘁, though. 𝘁 is just going to keep it where it is. It's actually pushing away from him. Yeah, that's a much better play from 𝘁, because it's not going to full crash, but a lot of those minions are going to get burnt from Ryuk. That's a really good play. And now into the mid lane, actually, he goes.
Ego is everywhere right now. 𝘀𝗀𝗺 does have a level 6, and Yado does not, so Ego does have to be somewhat careful, and 𝘀𝗀𝗺 just does not care that Ego is nearby, because, as we mentioned, he's level 6. He's got the Frozen Tomb available to him.
On that play, it looks like Glory's actually been trading health really effectively because Yado was relatively low health and mana during that process and had the advantage in terms of experience. Yado hadn't backed, it looks like, found a timer without the teleport, whereas 𝘀𝗀𝗺 did, and that might have actually prompted that. Whereas if there is a full health Yado there and has the chain, Ego almost certainly full engages off the back of that chain because the Aftershock was down. That's a kill coming through if both of them are able to engage. Because Yado was kind of low on that one, 𝘀𝗀𝗺 was able to walk out without burning the ultimate or the flash because they can't full engage with just one member, because that's kind of the idea of what Lissandra counters, because then you use the ultimate and all of a sudden Ego has been spotted in the mid lane, you're able to trade a good amount of health onto him, he can't respond into bottom side, so instead Ego stays with a higher percentage. He just walks into his top side, he walks down into bottom lane where Yado now has shove into 𝘀𝗀𝗺. He's going to back, probably wait for the respond of the wave in the mid lane, try to push it back out while Ego can start up the dragon, because they've got the 𝘁𝗀𝗺 Alistar. You can actually see Ron P's gotten a little bit crazy with challenging up against 𝘀𝗀𝗺 and the red buff. I would love it if the observers maybe could not pan over 𝘀𝗀𝗺, who's standing sitting in mid lane and show us what the Alistar was doing at the time, where he found a pretty nice
we
deep
got-
ward and flat out Drakthar as well. I'm bullying these observers today. I apologize.
I mean,
if
we
any
got
of
a
you ever hear
really
me.
nice view. We got a really nice view of the inhibitor through the scoreboard, and I really appreciated that one, Rebel.
I apologize to the observers. I'm not trying to be very mean. I also don't want to be mean to players, but like
Rebel's just naturally mean. You should be in the
naturally
VCS
mean. This
like
is my fault.
green room, and just hear what Rebel says to all of us. Sometimes it takes it out of you.
See, nobody else would say that. You're the only person I'm mean to. Whatever the audience.
It's because we go so far back, don't we?
I suppose we go back a fair distance.
Yeah. However, deviating from our history as casters for what is it, 2 years or something? I don't know. It's a 1.5. Yeah,
it's been a long
1,500.
Yeah, 1,500 gold. Yes.
1,500 gold lead for the side of Cerberus. Okay, so first wreck of the game being picked up by Cerberus, and we've got a Rift Herald spawning up soon. And Cerberus it feels like they've got lane priority in every lane right now.
They certainly have quite a bit. I'm a little shocked at what happened to the top lane because that kind of went to.
Rono P is going aggressive, an instant cleanse from Artemis on the double bomb from 𝘀𝘀. 𝘀𝘀 forced to flash over the wall, and 𝘀𝘀cie on the back foot. Cerberus making their way up towards the mid lane, and then in turn towards the Rift Herald.
Would you look at that? The level 6 comes in for 𝘁𝗀cie, which really is all they need. They burn all of the summoners, so the flash and both summoners from 𝘀𝘀, as well as from 𝘀𝘀. And the exhaust is the only thing left. And they've got the superior team fighting team. Skye needs to leave right now. There's no excuse to be fighting this. You might flip, you might take the Rift Herald, maybe you pick up a kill. That is best case scenario. Worst case scenario, you lose 5-5, you lose the game right now.
It's the VCS. They might as well be at T1 because it is the Rift Herald that has been secured. It's a 𝘀𝘀cie getting a 1-for-1. Ego shut down. 𝘀𝘀cie looking for Artemis, looking for Boss. They've been taken down so low, and BTS will gladly take their winnings as they bring themselves firmly back into this game.
How in the world did Cerberus mess this up? They get the Rift Herald, which is one positive thing. They engage with Ego on one side.
Oh, Ego can't move.
Ultimate, bro. What? He ulted halfway up the river. I'm like, okay, I'm waiting for like the culmination of 𝘁𝗀cie ultimate with an Alistar knockup and get the cannon on top of it, and all of a sudden you have this massive combo of ultimates. Yeah, his ultimate was down, but still, that's not. Like, you have to have that ultimate available. You need your big... this is a position where they can take a 5-on-5 and win hard. Dramatically hard. You throw an Alistar on top of a team and then put a Kennen ultimate on top of it with a 2-kill 𝘁𝗀, and that 𝘁𝗀 goes crazy in that team fight, and it doesn't even matter if you have Rift Herald in your back pocket. You probably have 3, 4, 5 kills onto your jungler who's going crazy in the game, and the game's just over. Thankfully, again, 𝘁𝗀cie was able to confirm that Rift Herald going over, but again, that felt like it could have been so rewarding for Cerberus if they end up with the right team fighting setup, just end up not being able to put it together, unfortunately.
Okay, so 𝘀𝘀cie, they've got Rift Herald now. Where do you want that Rift Herald to be dropped, Rebel?
At the moment, Kennen is up 2 kills, or 20 CS, my apologies, and is a pretty important part to the team fight. Your 𝘁𝗀cie and Alistar mostly, I think at this point, is not really intended to be aggressive, especially into a Zilean at level 6. So you're not wanting to put a bunch of resource into this bottom lane. If anything, what you want to do is try to break these two out of lane and then put them into topside for the likes of this Kennen. I think that's probably your best bet. The alternative is if they really want to strike super hard in the mid game, they can give it to 𝘁𝗀cie with the intent on trying to really push the pressure in that regard. But then if you end up losing, or you end up losing a fair amount of gold, and all of a sudden the top lane flips, then there's problems. But they seem to agree with me that top lane's the place to put it.
Yeah, Ryuk's just going to hook shot his way out. Ego and Boss just going to clear this wave tonight. Even more CS, even more gold from Ryuk.
Oh, hold on. During the replay, you saw that it said that 𝘁𝗀cie confirmed the Rift Herald, no?
No, it didn't.
I swear it said 𝘁𝗀cie said that.
I thought it said 𝘁𝗀cie.
It showed Kennen's picture, but it said it would execute it.
Yeah, that's...
Why does Drakthar have it?
I got baited by it, but no, it is Drakthar who has it. We've got an engage coming through, slicing Maelstrom under the tower. Ryuk going on a 2-post, trying to turn things around. He gets the kill. Heartbreaker forward. Ego picks up 2. 2 for 1 for Cerberus.
Yeah, I mean, it's another trade of kills, which, I mean, you do get some back for Ryuk, which is nice, but you're still putting damage into the 𝘂ego's hands, which is not a ideal situation, because this is your late game insurance if you're Cerberus. And 𝘀𝘀_𝗀𝗃 has to understand that they need to mitigate this as much as possible. It doesn't matter if you're putting more gold in the hands of your Camille, because it's not going to be as valuable as making sure to shut out gold from the hands of Ego. Because in the later stages, you still have Lissandra, who's going to be able to respond to Ego in some very meaningful way. You still have a powerful, like, composition to be able to work into what is a good team fight when you pair together a bunch of AoE. But 𝘂ego's is one of the main members that you're trying to shut down just so that he doesn't control everything. And Ego, again, is one of these players that you really don't want going crazy in the earlier stages of the game, yet here we are, we're sitting with this 𝘂ego really, really far into the game.
Okay, Rift Herald dropped in the mid lane. This will be gold going over on to 𝘀rie and 𝘀𝗀. How much gold? A couple of tower plates. Not a huge amount, not a huge value from this Rift Herald, but it was about to time out for 𝘀𝗀, so he had to get something off. Here's a replay of the top lane fight.
This is, I mean, I will give it to the side of 𝘀𝗀 because this ultimate was far more effective. Yes, he ends up trading, but again, both kills going onto Ego is phenomenal. They do not care about what happens there. I think 𝘀𝗀 can actually just, like, you want Kennen eventually to be getting a good amount of gold, but right now, Kennen being up 30 CS is more than enough advantage over Ryuk, especially with, like, this Comet rune. That's really not the intention of the Comet rune. It's to be more lane oppressive than it is to be, like, defensive in the laning phase for Ryuk, and so it's tough for him to try to capitalize on anything this far down, and it means that the advantage can continue flowing into Ego. I still want to see, what it is that they can do to continue to capitalize on that, because I still think that's the weakest match that they've got. It is nice that Cerberus also have been taking this, 𝘂𝗀𝗃 𝘀𝗃 with this level 6 and this powerful AoE like engagement that they've got, and they've pressured out the Jhin and the likes of this 𝘁ion, who, like, 𝘁ion is weak in the earlier stages. We know that. Once you get onto a couple of items, once you get into, like, mid-game territory, 𝘁ion is a beast, really hard to take down. The ultimate is invaluable within a team fight. And so for the moment, it is Artemis and 𝘀𝗀 who are trying to the best of their abilities to just capitalize on what strength the 𝘁𝗀 and 𝘀𝗀 bring in this moment, which of course is, like, if Aamine and Elio step up in the bottom lane, they're getting engaged on. They're probably going to die in just the very, very quick trades, even with the 𝘁ion ultimate at this point. And they're exploiting that for bot side pressure. So Ego has controlled top, and Artemis, 𝘀𝗀, and their champions alone have been enough to control bottom lane. We like that blue buff exchange here for 𝘀rie. That was quite nice as well.
I thought for a second 𝘀rie was going to let the blue buff hit 𝘀𝗀 and cancel the back, and then he just got the icicle off in time to be able to secure the blue buff for himself. I feel really bad for Ryuk.
Yeah, Ryuk is taking quite a bit, which is actually nice, because again, if you're going to pick something defensive into Alistar, like something that's not going to lose into Alistar, like a 𝘁ion, I mean, you're not really killing that bottom lane if you're the 𝘁ion Jhin. It's never going to happen. And so they know that that bottom lane is completely neutralized, and that's why Ego has been putting all this attention into 𝘀𝗀 on the top side. The Kennen matchup is going to be really good now, because he's on first item and sword shoes, and is really important for the team fighting of the squad. And at the same time, their bottom lane was set up. This is something I guess we missed during the course of the drafting phase, because we were so worried about, what is the 𝘁𝗀 actually going to do into a 𝘁ion when the 99% slow comes out. And our question probably should have been, how is a 𝘁ion going to aggress against this bottom lane when he's got a 99% slow? And pretty much the only other thing in the kit is the double bomb and then the ultimate, which really don't do that much into the likes of a 𝘁𝗀 when an Alistar is nearby, especially when a Jhin is trying to follow up on it. So this is just a neutralized bottom lane with superior team fighting to begin, and all of the resource has gone into top side. It's actually quite nice from Cerberus. Their game planning looked a lot better than we thought it was going to be.
Ryuk, he's going to have to take the hook shot out, but no, he's actually wanting to go back in onto Ego, but Artemis and 𝘀𝗀 are here. He does not have the damage, and Ryuk, who had a pretty good performance in Game 1, it has to be said, on the 𝘀𝗀, he's just not being allowed to play League of Legends here in Game 2. He's been ganked so many times by Ego, zoned away from so much CS, so much gold. Deadly Flourish actually connecting onto Yado as 𝘀𝗀 look towards picking up their first tower of the game.
And now, I mean, they can rotate into the Rift Herald pit if they wanted to try to contest number 2. They traded a mid tower for top tower, and now this is the point, but they are way too late to try to contest the Rift Herald. They could try to move on to the 𝘁𝗀, who is still deep in their territory. In fact, there's 4 members from Cerberus. They might have to teamfight just to get out.
The teleport's coming through. 𝘀𝗀 engaged on her, drops her down the Crescent Guard, but the 𝘁ion ult has been wasted. Wind becomes lightning, tags onto Ego. They get the kill onto Ego. Ego's down. There's no more resets, but Yado, 𝘀𝗀 still alive. Ryuk getting run down by the 𝘁𝗀. Yado distorting over the wall, looking towards Elio, who will be able to take the blast cone out to safety. Doesn't even need it. 3 kills for 1. Cerberus coming out on top, and this game starting to lose hope for 𝘀𝗀. it's just how do they get back into this? They're losing fights. They had that one good fight, one lucky fight in around the first Rift Herald because 𝘁 didn't know how to use his ultimate. But after that, it's just been all 𝘂𝑏RUS.
It wasn't lucky. It was 𝘂𝑏RUS not using their tools properly. Now they're using their tools properly. This is an important distinction. That was a really good fight because, again, they had all their pieces together, and they didn't use them unnecessarily. 𝘁 had a good ultimate. They had a really, really good control around the likes of 𝘀𝗀. I was really impressed, actually, by 𝘀𝗀's ultimate to deny 𝘁, but then the ultimate from Zilean did absolutely nothing. And from that point, all of a sudden, 𝘂𝑟YUKE is supposed to do a bit more of the damage in this team. He's been shut out of the earlier stage of the game. 𝘀𝑟Y doesn't do as much, but should be in the midst of things just to try to put some damage in. Was not able to find anything spectacular. Had to ult immediately, you can see right there, and not really able to do anything but throw some disruption. And 𝘂𝑟Mini, I mean, you look at him, he's backing off from the LeBlanc. He gets that, the one Gale Force, the one auto attack before getting CC, just has to flash. He put 2 auto attacks and a Gale Force into this fight. That means that the Jhin is not carrying either. So it's difficult to find where your damage is coming from now. That your top side has been completely shut out. You don't have the proper Zilean ultimates. Early in this game, this is going to be difficult for 𝘂𝑟𝑒 to assault. And 𝘂𝑟𝑒 have done a great job exploiting it by saying, okay, we're going to fight when we can, when we have the AoE. We're going to take the Rift Herald in as much as we can, and then we're going to play around dragons. So now, in the next 18 seconds when the next dragon comes up, if they're able to snag that relatively freely from 𝘂𝑟𝑒 or even at a competition against 𝘂𝑟𝑒, that puts them on now a 5-minute timer to say, okay, you're going to fight us in 5 minutes, or you're going to lose the infernal soul of all things. That's why 𝘁 is pushing into the river to make sure that they can contest this. Of course, if they continue this, that means 𝘬𝑚𝑚 gets the free push on the top side, and then you have a LeBlanc, which is a problem in the later stages.
Well, it's either fight in 5 minutes or it's a fight right now, and 𝘂𝑟𝑒 might be taking the option of fighting now, but 𝘂𝑟𝑒 don't want to fully commit to this play. 𝘬𝑚𝑚 is in the top lane, just split pushing, and 𝘂𝑟𝑒 don't want to utilize that teleport at this point in the game. Instead, they're going to push in the mid lane. They're going to be picking up their third outer tower, or well, the third tower of the game, the second outer tower of the match.
Much more intelligent play coming out from the side of 𝘂𝑟𝑒. Instead of trying to go for a fight, which, again, winnable, but not necessarily full, like, a guarantee if you don't get every one of your tools to hit properly for the side of 𝘂𝑟𝑒 in the earlier stages. And again, one really flipped fight that costs you a neutral objective like this costs you a very large amount of ground inside of the game. Right? That's just going to happen. So instead, they opt for free gold on top side, free gold in mid lane, and then they're just going to bounce back. They're going to get better back timings here that's going to be able to respond and get them on the map faster. And especially with Viego on your team, with a 𝘁𝑟𝑒 on your team, and the ability to turn off with like Alistar, with 𝘁𝑟𝑒 ultimate, with LeBlanc over a wall, and with Kennen, they can set up around a Baron really, really easily, very quickly into this game. It's a 2-item 𝘁𝑟𝑒. It's going to be a 2-item, Viego sometime here in the very near future. And at that point, 𝘂𝑟𝑒 has to be very terrified of the prospect of a very early Baron striking against them and costing them a lot of pressure around the map. That's gold that's going to be flooded out of their system, and that's going to be pressure around the third dragon that's going to get 𝘂𝑟𝑒 up again, maybe 5 minutes later than they would have wanted, but for that team fight that they're inevitably going to try to use to close things out.
And speaking of 𝘂𝑟𝑒 having that Viego, one thing that 𝘂𝑟𝑒 don't have is any anti-healing currently, and that makes me a little bit scared, especially considering the Viego resets, and Artemis as well with the Immortal Shield Bow will have a fair bit of healing to the kit.
I don't think it's the most... I don't think it's the thing that's most cause for concern right now for the side of 𝘂𝑟𝑒.
Okay, yeah, true. The fact that 𝘂𝑟𝑒 are 5,000 gold ahead is a little bit more cause for concern.
That's pressing. It's also pressing to think, again, where your damage is coming from, because Camille is supposed to pick up the slack from where Jhin and Lissandra aren't necessarily the greatest in their role at this specific role, this kind of option. Yet in this game, again, 𝘂𝑟𝑒 took so much of the early pressure that it was difficult for him to get enough damage to now be the same kind of, what I would call the same kind of mediator that 𝘁𝑠 was in the previous game, where 𝘁𝑠 in the previous game was like, he was up 2 kills, 1 death, 5 assists, something like that, was farmed up decently, was able to challenge into the opposing ADC without having to worry about getting blown up. That same role doesn't actually exist for 𝘂𝑟𝑒 within this game because of how far he's been put behind, and that means it's much, you don't have as much time to convert on that front line. You don't have 𝘂𝑟𝑒 and 𝘀𝑟𝑒 and 𝘀𝗀 and their ability to try to push through what is Rano, P, 𝘁𝑠, Ego, whoever's in your face at the time, before that backline starts to rip through 𝘂𝑟𝑒's health bar. 𝘂𝑟𝑒 just has to bail as fast as possible, and all of a sudden the reinforcements just overflood your team.
Well, 9 kills to 3, 𝘂𝑟𝑒 completely on a top, and I do want to touch back to one point. Why is 𝘂𝑟𝑒 playing Zilean? It did not work in the last time. It's not working out fantastically at this point. It's still early stages for the Zilean, still stacking up the tier, but I'm just getting deja vu vibes as, well, the Fate's Call comes through. It's a 3-man pulverize. Pop will go the Xin Zhao, but he has, or pardon me, Pop goes 𝗀𝗄𝗃. There's 𝘀𝗀 distorting forward, almost able to find the kill onto 𝘀𝗀. Somehow no one dies from 𝘀𝗀, courtesy of the Chrono Shift from 𝘀𝗀. But so many summoners burned, and Cerberus just exerting their authority, really, on the map, and now turning towards the Baron.
If you want to know why the Zilean was picked, that is the exact reason. When you spend that much on an engagement from Cerberus, it means you don't have a lot of tools to work with after. The thing that they did conserve was Paz's ultimate, which is why Paz is on his amazing flank angle into the river. If they walk through the river, they're okay with this. There are lower health bars, but they're starting to heal up now. As you said, the sustain is there for a handful of members. Ego is still relatively low, and 𝘀𝗀 is actually in a very nice position to try to flank. Paz, I think, should have maintained his integrity in that brush and should have tried to use this, because this is a rough position to be in now.
Okay, they go in, they're looking for Ego, looking to lock him down, looking to take him out of the fight. 𝘀𝗀 able to take 𝗀𝗄𝗃 out on the backside, but 𝘀𝗀 able to find one. 𝘀𝗀 now just charging towards 1OP. Hook shots forward, gets the kill, but surely will die in the process. 𝘀𝗀 now onto 2 members. 𝘀𝗀 on the run. 𝘀𝗀 trying to be able to kill. Paz Wind becomes lightning, going to be able to do it. Ego able to get the kill, able to get the reset. Frozen Claw forward, trying to get onto 𝘀𝗀 as he ults forward. Ego though taking a fair amount of damage as the Crescent Guard has been dropped, and 𝘀𝗀 not going to be able to sidestep the CSC. 𝘀𝗀 on so little HP. 𝘀𝗀, the healing is kind of ridiculous, kind of nutty, but is not enough, and eventually Ego will get the kill. Critically though for 𝘀𝗀, they deny the Baron.
Importantly here, again, 𝘀𝗀 actually make the really correct call. Cerberus burnt so much from their team fight that it was really near impossible for them to turn off this Baron properly unless Paz gets a really solid ultimate. And when he bailed from his flank angle, he was never going to be able to find that. The problem here is Cerberus split so heavily that it was impossible to keep everyone on the same kind of vein of attacking during this fight. 𝗀𝗄𝗃 and as well as 𝘀𝗀 in the backline got jumped on really quickly, and they had no consistent damage outside of 𝘀𝗀 and 𝘀𝗀, who were trying to pick up the pieces. Props to them for lasting out in that fight a lot longer than they thought they would have. I think 𝘀𝗀 also getting stuck in the back of the Baron pit was really harmful to that process, because it meant that another one of these type CC and a little bit more damage was lost from that fight. But again, 𝘀𝗀 at least finding the right opportunity attack. Unfortunately, it means nothing because they don't get the gold back that they need to really make a massive difference inside of this game. And again, you can see Paz kind of jumped on everybody as a fight starts.
More fighting occurring. 1OP looking towards 𝘀𝗀. He's going to take the hook shot out. 𝗀𝗄𝗃 forced to use the Gale Force, and 𝘀𝗀 on the side. Cerberus were able to pick up the Infernal Drake and now move on to Solar Point. And 𝘀𝗀 right now is just stemming the bleeding, trying to be able to survive for longer, try to get 𝘀𝗀 stronger, try to get 𝗀𝗄𝗃 stronger, and, well, try to get 𝘀𝗀 stronger as well, who is yet to complete an item on the Zilean.
They're just trying to get everybody stronger. Again, the more gold that gets kind of thrown into this 𝘀𝗀 team, the harder this is actually going to be for Cerberus to full on take, especially because Paz has not been incredibly creative with the use of these Kennen ultimates. On a solid TP flank, on a solid angle, you can do an unseen amount of damage with the likes of what this Kennen can bring, but that just has not been there. The creativity from Paz has not been there on the likes of this Kennen pick, and it gives me a lot of cause for concern that that's not going to be a valid option for a late game team fight. Now, I will say Artemis being as far ahead as Artemis is, as Artemis usually does in this game, as well as 𝘀𝗀 and Ego both kind of popping off. You don't need as much of the Kennen to do a fair amount of the heavy lifting in a team fight, because they do have at least enough single target damage to bridge that gap. And especially with 𝗀𝗄𝗃 is still only on 2 items, just barely. I think finished the second item only seconds ago. 𝘀𝗀 has gone very defensive with the build. It means that 𝘀𝗀 has to pick up a fair amount of the slack as well. 𝘀𝗀 is trying to pick up the slack, and neither one of them is in a fantastic position to really pick up all of the damage that's necessary to carry a game. Right now, they're trying to figure out what their game plan is for trying to generate play around this next dragon. Because if they give up the Infernal Soul, all of a sudden, this Infernal Soul means that this scaling is here from the side of Cerberus. If it wasn't there already, their team fight is all that much meaner, and things get so hard for the side of 𝘀𝗀. It's near impossible to play out from that point forward, just because the team fighting, the individual damage, it's all there. Now, Baron buff yet again. This time, they've got all their tools up. They're going to have to turn out of the pit for it. Can they get anyone here? 𝘀𝗀's across the map. TP's available.
𝘀𝗀 does have the teleport available, is now teleporting to the play. 𝘀𝗀 just trying to zone members away. Ego keeping the Baron engaged. And 𝘀𝗀 is just going to get popped by 𝘀𝗀 as the side of Cerberus just turn back towards the Baron. 𝘀𝗀, it's now a 4v5 scenario.
You can't fight.
𝘀𝗀, yeah, they just have to go mid lane. They're going to take the inner tower, presumably, and 𝘀𝗀 never it got anywhere close to the top side river. I want to touch on some item breakpoints right now for 𝘀𝘀_𝗀𝗏 because 𝘁𝑎 is getting closer to having 2 items, maybe already has it with that death and being able to reset. 𝘀𝗀𝗍 close to picking up 3-4 items. Once he has the Infinity Edge, maybe he can start to do a little bit more work, but at the same time, 𝘁ado's getting stronger, 𝘁 is getting stronger, same for 𝘁artemis.
Right now, I mean, when it comes to enforcing their will, Cerberus is doing a fantastic job of using the items that they have. The fact that 𝘁 was able to force into that because they were trying to generate a massive engagement with 3 members into their team, and they just kind of caught 𝘁uke out, I think honestly was maybe the best thing that could have happened, because if 𝘁uke isn't there to catch that and absorb all of that attention, all of a sudden, that means like maybe a 3-person engagement into the side of 𝘀𝗏 just breaks this game completely in half, because they win a full 5-man team fight and get the Baron instead of just the 1 member in the Baron. So maybe slight fighting chances left for the side of 𝘀𝘀_𝗀𝗏, but at this point, it seems like Cerberus, they knew coming into this game that they couldn't play slow pace. They knew coming into this game that they needed to make things happen quickly, or they were going to kind of dissolve after everything came together for the side of 𝘀𝘀_𝗀𝗏, and they made exactly that happen. And now, I mean, we're a minute out. The Baron buff is being used to shove out mid and bot lane. They're setting up for the Dragon, and that fight's going to come through one way or another. 𝘀𝘀_𝗀𝗏 is going to have to pray that they can actually make this work, because if it doesn't, again, this game seems like it's just completely out of reach for them. They're out of this game almost certainly if the Infernal Soul goes the way of Cerberus, because they simply won't be able to match anymore the amount of just flat stats that are coming out from this squad.
Important to remember as well, this is series point for Cerberus. They took game 1. It was not a convincing win by any stretches of the imagination. A super close game, one of the best games we've seen so far in the Winter Split. But here in game 2, it's looking like this is the Cerberus show. However, 𝘁uke just splitting in the side lane, trying to get some map pressure. He's been able to pick up 1 tower, now looking potentially towards an inner tower as well. And to be honest, at this point, now that he's got 2 items, it's very difficult for anyone from the side of Cerberus to really be able to match this 𝘁a𝗏 in the split push.
I mean, yeah, Kennen can do it because he's got the damage to dissuade as long as the ultimate's available, but I'm certain that 𝘁uke would be okay with 𝘁 using the ultimate to deter him from taking a tower or something along those lines. 𝘁uke's tried to stay relevant, but again, for the amount that he has to do to help carry through the lack of damage on the remainder of his team, there is at least that aspect to consider in the later stages. And they are even giving up this Infernal Soul. This feels wrong. I think their thought process here is if they contest this Infernal Soul, they almost certainly lose, and that means that they have absolutely no chance. Whereas if they can hold out for 5 minutes and look for an Infernal or an Elder Soul and maybe seal that one away, if Drakthar can pull a miracle and fight up against the side of Cerberus somehow, that could be their opening to get back into this game, but that is really precarious at this point. You are praying that this team fight is not going to full come together for the side of Cerberus, or that they're not just going to win in this process. Why is this Observer following so slowly? This fight's been happening for minutes. Yeah,
𝘁uke was able to get the kill, and all the while Cerberus able to turn back, get a kill onto 𝘁adow. It's a double kill for 𝘁artemis. Drakthar being engaged on, he flashes when becomes lightning, able to tag on to the Grom on the run, but 𝘁artemis is hopping, 𝘁artemis is jumping, 𝘁artemis is closing the gap, so is Ego. They're trying to find the slows. Oh, that's actually quite nice from Drakthar, but is it going to be enough? He's trying to play some LeBlanc or 𝘀𝘀_𝗀𝗏 stuff. Just that he's not on a LeBlanc. 𝘁artemis will end up getting the kill, and we talked about not contesting over the Infernal. BTS tried to contest, tried to find a kill onto 𝘁, but in the end, they just get outmaneuvered, they get out-collapsed, and it is a 4v3 scenario as 𝘁adow respawns. 𝘁uke will be up in a few seconds. This might be a potential game-ending play.
And they burnt so little. They still have 𝘁adow's ultimate to be able to fish with. They still have Ego's ultimate to go to reset city. And they've got 𝘁 ultimate to work with as well. They do lose a fair amount if they're just like pure team fighting engagement ultimates between 𝘁 and 𝘁artemis. But I mean, they're just using this gold. They're walking into the base and there's nothing that 𝘀𝘀_𝗀𝗏𝗏 can do. This probably just ends up being the end of the game unless they can really make a massive hold happen. But I don't see it.
Well, they dropped down the Zilean ult onto 𝘁uke. Drakthar up in a few seconds at time. Everyone from BTS is still alive as Drakthar has now respawned. 2 inhibitors down. Drakthar not quite going to be able to tag on to 𝘁adow with the Xin Zhao W. They are on the chase. Zilean gives the speed up. 𝘀adow not going to be close enough to drop down a 4th shot. But 𝘁uke and 𝘀adow both teleporting for this play. They're going to get the CC. They're going to get the lockdown. Can they get the kill? 𝘁adow! The auto will follow over the wall. It will be a kill for 𝘀𝘀_𝗀𝗏𝗏, but so much was invested. 𝘀𝘀_𝗀𝗏𝗀𝗀 using so much to try to find any sliver of a way back into this game.
They're grasping at straws, in my opinion, at this point. You're down way too much. 9,000 gold and Infernal Soul is too much to overcome, and I guess their thought process here eventually was, if they can flip at the next dragon, that's great, but they can also try to find side lane picks with some of their tools. Because they do have Lissandra, they do have Camille, they do have Jhin to be able to work with in terms of, like, engagement and CC from a range to work with. But it's not going to be enough to be able to get yourself fully back into a game like this when you're this far down, especially with the AoE setup that Cerberus is going to have. All they have to do is wait for the dragon as well, and I'm certain that even with an Elder Drake, if you are able to take it fast enough, maybe you can contest, but if you don't take it immediately, that team is going to be dropping too much damage for you to capitalize. And you can see the attempt is quite nice. Ryuk, unfortunately, again, just does not have the damage to match boss because there's no magic resist in his build yet. Elio also tries to assist him with the ultimate, but look how much damage he did to 2 full members and burned the ultimates. I also want to note Ron OP with a cool little mechanic here. He blocked the hook shot with a flash in place to make sure Artemis could just keep auto-attacking in multiple directions. And yeah, they don't get Drakthar immediately, but it does take a second, but eventually they're able to chase him down. And it just doesn't matter. Again, this is just a massive team fight from Cerberus that they're going to keep winning over and over.
The self-ult from Glory, but he's going to die on the exit. Goes Golden. Slicing Maelstrom not actually going to do too much work, but Yado will. As down goes the Zilean. Will pop the ult, but will die as soon as he comes out. Yado chasing Aomine. It's all done. It's all over for BTS. It was a valiant game in Game 1, but Game 2 has just been all Cerberus. Cerberus showing why they are at the top of the standings, why they have not lost a series yet. Cerberus on to the final 2 Nexus towers, all members still alive, and it is only Aomine still alive for Burst. Sky is able to find a kill onto Ron OP, but that is all. Cerberus take the win 2-0 over BTS.
And it is a matter of, Cerberus in the very last or in the early stage of this, again, we're in a weird position. They're drafted and feel perfect. In the last game, they tried something new as well. Games of Zilean and Callista, 2 in a row for Artemis, to me, show a bit of growth in that they're able to use their bot lane in different ways than what we expected, rather than just being this traditional, like, marksman late game type AD, and the rest of the map having to play around that. You can see that they're able to do it in very different ways, which I think is rather impressive, that they're throwing us more angles as we're getting ready for this massive swap that can come about tomorrow. For Cerberus to win a game like this, really, really good stuff from them. They go undefeated of the first half. They still have a second half. This is usually where, things start to fall apart, but this doesn't look like a Cerberus that's about to fall to pieces. This looks like one that can actually run the distance.
And with that, we'll bring Mabinogi back onto the analyst desk. Mabi, honestly, after seeing that game, you struggled to think that Burst Sky got so close to beating Cerberus in Game 1.
I mean, you look at that game and you have to actually remember that it was kind of doomed from minute 1, or at least minute 3, because of that flip at the top side. Like, we mentioned in the draft and throughout the cast that it was Ryuk that was going to have to pick up pick up for the lack of damage on the Lissandra Jhin, but because the early double kill went over to Ego, there was no real ability for the top side to actually ever contest that again. So Ego went top, you can no longer contest there. And since bot lane's going to be a wash, mid lane's going to be a wash, it doesn't matter. You're going to actually have damage in those lanes as the game progresses. You just need to keep going top again. And since BTS can't actually contest you, they weren't able to get Elio out on a roam at all because it's Zilean. You were getting shoved in. And Zilean roams at pre-level 6, pre-level 4 at even... Zilean roams suck. Zilean roams are not good, is the short version. So, because they flipped so early, the game was all but doomed from there. There was a glimmer of hope around that first Herald, but that was not because BTS were in a position to win. It's because Poss just forgot his flash was down and ulted in the middle of lane and was like, I have to walk at you.
Yeah. Rebel, good signs for Cerberus. For BTS, though, heading into the second round robin, we asked the question of, okay, after this, where will BTS find themselves? And I think this kind of shows that maybe... I mean, they put up a better showing against Cerberus than 𝘀cie did, right?
On a scoreline basis, no. The second game was really not great. Game 1 was very competitive, but that did not stop them from making unwieldy, boneheaded mistakes. For a team that is growing into the success that they have at this point, we have to be a bit patient with what it is that they're capable of doing. Dropping a game like this against our number one team is to be expected, right? They didn't walk into this one a favorite. They didn't walk into this one, as the preferred team by any standard whatsoever. The fact that game one was so close was a surprise to pretty much everyone. The thing I can take away about the first half here from 𝘀𝘀cie is, again, the amount of growth that 𝘀𝑎𝑏 and Ryuk have gone through as individuals, the growth that, 𝘀𝑔Lory has been showing, 𝘂eMine has been amazing, and then I think 𝘀𝑑RAKθR caps off everything. 𝘀𝑑RAKθR in the last series was heroic for his team in a number of times, and especially in that game too was really good. 𝘀𝘀cie are, I think, able to really rely on him being a consistent force in the jungle, in a way that last split and the split before, when they weren't even 𝘀𝘀cie, were not able to, which I think is the most important part for this team. Walking into the second half, you got to see them clean stuff up. They're still a very youthful team. They're still a team that's trying to find, their beat. They're really trying to find, especially to me, like these overstays and things need to be fixed. But the fact that they are making these first moves look good, the fact that their players are looking good and having these highlight moments, it's really promising for 𝘀𝘀cie right now. They are on the up and up. They are not on the down and down, even after a loss like this.
Just final closing comments before we do throw to a break. 𝘁𝗹𝗶𝗹𝗀 and Rebel, your thoughts on MVP for the series?
Whew. I don't know, because
the only right answer is Ego. Ego literally won game one, and game two, that Viego went nuts. I think that's the only person I can get. Everybody had their amazing moments, but I think Ego's the only one you can get definitively to.
yeah,
And he didn't mess up any Rift Heralds.
Did he get any Rift Heralds?
Yes.
He messed them up.
It was a Rift Herald mid, remember?
Okay, sure. Look, yeah, Ego's fine. Ego's fair.
Ego's fine.
Well, Ego wasn't very balanced this series in a good way, if you're a Cerberus fan. And with that, we're going to be jumping on into a short break. And when we return, we will be having our second series of the day as 𝘂TC Esports take on Team Flash. Stay tuned. We'll be right back here at VCS English.